The first sandbag landed against the cottage porch with a wet, muscular thud. Rowan lifted her head from her knees. Another struck beside it. Then came the scrape of boots, the slam of a truck door, and a woman's voice cutting through the rain. "Not there, Warren. You'll dam the water against the steps. I know how water works, Marisol. You once put out a grease fire with a dish towel. It was the closest thing. 3 hours after Rowan's family had put her belongings in trash bags and sent her downhill to a flooded house, the neighbors were arriving with headlights, shovels, plywood, and enough sand to defend something worth saving. Rowan had no idea why. 3 hours earlier, Grant Bell had been standing at their grandmother's dining table, assigning prices to everything Evelyn had loved. Main house, $620, assuming the roof isn't as bad as it looks. He tapped a legal pad with the silver pin he carried for occasions when he wanted to appear employable. Cabins and workshop, maybe $480 as they stand. More after improvements. "And the cottage?" Rowan asked. Grant glanced through the window. The rain had not started yet, but clouds pressed low over the river, turning the afternoon green around the edges. The cottage is a subtraction. Celia sat at the head of the table in Evelyn's chair. She had tied her dark hair into a clean knot and changed out of her funeral clothes, though the funeral had been only yesterday. Evelyn's blue ceramic sugar bowl stood near her elbow. Celia kept touching its lid, aligning the little white rose with the seam in the table. "Can we not call it that?" she said. "What should I call it?" "Nothing. Leave it out." Grant drew a line through something on his pad. "Fine. The mud house is officially nothing." Rowan looked down the hill again. Through the trees she could see one corner of the cottage roof and the crooked brick chimney. The river itself was hidden beyond the road, but she could smell it through the screen: mud, leaves, and that cold mineral scent that meant rain upstream. Evelyn had called the place Riverbend Cottage. Grant renamed it the Mud House after the March flood, pushed brown water through the kitchen, and left a dead carp under the sewing table. Celia slid a mug toward Rowan. "Coffee?" It had been sitting untouched for nearly an hour. A pale skin had formed over the cream. "No, thanks. You should eat something." "I ate." Grant made a small sound. Rowan looked at him. "What?" "Nothing." "You made a sound." I breathed. You breathed sarcastically. For half a second, Celia's mouth twitched. Then she pressed her lips together, and Rowan felt worse for having almost made her laugh. Grant set down his pen. At 29, he had Evelyn's long nose and none of her patience. He wore loafers without socks, even in mud season, and kept checking his phone beneath the table as if an important company might realize he was missing. "Can we finish?" he asked. "I'm trying to make this fair." "No," Rowan said. "You're trying to make it fast. Fast and fair aren't enemies. They are when you're doing the math." Celia rubbed her forehead. Rowan. There it was. Not a warning exactly. More like a hand closing gently over her mouth. For the past week, Rowan had watched Celia choose funeral flowers, return casserole dishes, call the electric company, and answer every question before anybody else had time to think. Celia had always moved through grief as if it were a badly managed office. Grant turned the legal pad so Rowan could see it. The page divided Bellwether Landing into neat pieces. Celia would take the main house and assume most of its debt and repairs. Grant would take the 6 rental cabins, workshop, equipment shed, and the gravel lot along the upper road. Rowan would receive $8,000 immediately, then another small payment after Grant refinanced. The numbers looked precise enough to be honest. $8,000, Rowan said. "To start," Grant replied. "That's less than you spent on your truck. My truck earns money. It has heated cup holders. Those don't prevent it from earning money." Celia pushed back from the table. "Grant, stop." He raised both hands. Rowan looked at the page again. "You put my share of Grandma's tools under workshop equipment. Because they're in the workshop. Her industrial sewing machine isn't cabin equipment. It can be. She taught me on it. And you're welcome to use it. While you own it." Grant leaned forward. "You're 20, Ro. You have no steady job, no savings, and half a semester's worth of credits you may or may not finish. I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying ownership costs money before it makes money." Rowan felt Celia watching her. She had spent the previous night in Evelyn's room because she could not bear her own. The oxygen machine was gone, but square dents remained in the carpet where it had stood. At 2 in the morning, Rowan had woken certain she heard Evelyn knocking her water glass against the bed rail. No one had knocked, The house had simply changed its breathing. I know what things cost, Rowan said. Grant's expression softened in a way she hated more than the smirking. Not these things. For 2 years, Rowan had driven Evelyn to appointments, washed her hair in the kitchen sink, cleaned the cabins between guests, and crawled under sinks while Grant called from 3 states away with ideas for modernizing the booking system. Celia had sent money every month. She never forgot that part, and neither did anyone else. Money left receipts. Rowan's work had left a clean scalp, folded sheets, and a woman who had not died alone. Celia lifted the sugar bowl lid and set it down again. "You can't maintain this place by yourself," she said. "None of us can. Grant's proposal keeps it in the family, his part of it." "Our part," Grant said. Rowan turned toward the window. The cottage roof appeared between 2 wet sycamores. Evelyn had stopped renting it years ago, after the furnace failed. Then it became her sewing room, storm shed, and repository for objects too useful to discard. Rowan remembered shelves of folded canvas, jars of screws, coffee cans full of buckles, and Evelyn swearing at a bobbin beneath the yellow work light. Before the March flood, Rowan had meant to go down and move things upstairs. That week, Evelyn had fallen twice. The cottage could wait. Then the river came. "What about that?" Rowan asked. Grant followed her gaze. "What about it? I'll take the cottage." The room became so quiet that the refrigerator clicking off in the kitchen sounded enormous. Celia stopped touching the sugar bowl. Grant looked from Rowan to the window and back. "You're joking." "No. It has mold." "I know. The floor is buckled. I saw it. It doesn't have power. Then you won't have to list the power under my assets." "Rowan," Celia said carefully, "this is not how you make a point. I'm not making a point. You are upset. Of course I'm upset. Grandma died." Celia flinched as if Rowan had accused her of forgetting. Grant recovered first. "All right, let's say you're serious. The cottage and how much cash?" "No cash. The cottage, the yard, and the drainage strip beside it." He stared at her. "The ditch?" "The strip goes to the marsh. It's a mosquito farm. Then you won't miss it." Grant stood and walked to the window. He put both hands in his pockets, doing figures in his head. That frightened Rowan. If he laughed, she could keep fighting. Calculation meant she had offered him something. Celia rose more slowly. "You don't have to do this today. Grant said we had to finish." "Grant says a lot of things." "Most of them are correct," Grant said. Neither sister looked at him. Celia came around the table. Close-up powder had settled in the tired lines beneath her eyes. She smelled faintly of Evelyn's hand lotion. "You've had a terrible 2 years," Celia said. "You're exhausted, and you don't know what comes next. I understand that." "No, you don't. I understand more than you think. You came 4 times. Grant turned from the window. "Don't!" But Rowan could not stop. The number had lived in her too long. 4 visits in 2 years. 1 Christmas, 2 birthdays, and the weekend you decided Grandma needed better curtains. Celia's face emptied. "I sent money every month. I know. I called. You called me. You talked to her for 5 minutes, then asked me if she was getting worse. Because every time I talked to her, she pretended she was fine. She didn't want you to worry. She didn't want me involved." Celia's voice sharpened. "There's a difference." Rowan looked away first. A gust moved through the trees. The screen door gave a soft rattle, the same sound it had made all Rowan's life. Grant picked up his pen. "If Rowan wants the cottage and the drainage parcel in satisfaction of her portion, I'm not going to stop her." "Of course you aren't," Celia said. "It's her decision." "No, it's convenient for you. Something can be both." Rowan reached across the table and took the legal pad. "Write it down." Grant hesitated, then did. It was not a contract. Nothing was final. Just blue ink on yellow paper, Grant's quick handwriting describing the boundaries they all knew. Yet, when he finished, the cottage seemed to detach from the hill and settle onto Rowan's shoulders. Celia watched her read the words. "You really mean to live there?" "Yes, it's not habitable. I'll make it habitable." "With what money?" "I'll work." "At what?" "I'll figure it out." Celia gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "That has always been your answer." Rowan folded the paper once. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you wait until things become emergencies, and somebody else handles the part you didn't think through." Rowan stared at her. "Somebody else?" "I did not mean Grandma." "Who handled Grandma, Celia?" Grant stepped between them. though neither had moved. Everybody needs to cool off. Celia's eyes had gone bright. She turned toward Evelyn's chair and gripped its carved back. "You think you were the only one who gave anything up," she said. "You gotta stay here. You got the soft years." Rowan almost asked which years Celia meant. The year Evelyn forgot the stove twice, or the year she accused Rowan of stealing her blue sweater while wearing it. The month Rowan learned how to change a dressing without gagging. The last 6 weeks when sleep came in pieces small enough to swallow. Instead, she said, "Soft." Celia closed her eyes. Grant looked at the floor. When Celia opened them again, whatever might have been an apology had hardened into something more useful to her. "If the cottage is your house," she said, "then you don't need a room here." Grant's head snapped up. "Sell." "No. She wants to be treated like an owner." "Fine. I didn't say tonight," Rowan said. "You said you were claiming it." "I am. Then claim it." Celia walked into the hallway. A moment later, a closet door opened. Rowan waited for Grant to say something. He picked up the silver pen and slid it carefully into his shirt pocket. By the time the rain began, everything Rowan still owned had been packed into 4 black trash bags, 1 canvas duffel, and a laundry basket with a broken handle. Celia set the last bag on the porch without meeting her eyes. Grant stood inside the doorway, holding the keys to Evelyn's old pickup. "I need the truck for the cabins," he said. Rowan looked at the keys, then at him. "Obviously," she said. She carried the first 2 bags downhill as the rain darkened the shoulders of her sweatshirt. Nobody offered an umbrella. Nobody told her to come back. The cottage door stuck before opening with a wet gasp. Inside, the air smelled of mud, mildew, and lavender soap. A brown waterline circled the room above Rowan's ankles. The warped floor shifted under her shoes. She found an overturned bucket near the stairs and sat on it in the growing dark. When the first sandbag struck the porch, she thought part of the cottage had collapsed. Then came voices, doors, boots. Rowan opened the door. Marisol Vega stood in the rain wearing a yellow slicker and gardening gloves. Behind her, Warren Pike wrestled a sandbag from the bed of an old truck, while a tall man Rowan vaguely recognized from the boat shop unrolled blue plastic across the hood. Marisol looked past Rowan into the ruined cottage, then back at her wet hair and empty hands. Rowan stared at the line of headlights gathering along the road. Then she stepped off the porch and reached for a sandbag. The sandbag was heavier than it looked. Rowan got it 6 inches off the truck bed before the weight folded her arms. The tall man caught the other end. "Bend your knees," he said. "I did. Those were your ankles. I know where my knees are." "Good. We've saved time." Rain ran from his hair into his eyes. He blinked it away and nodded toward the porch. Rowan carried her end backward, trying not to show how badly the wet burlap scraped her palms. Marisol pointed with a shovel. "Along the left side. Overlap it with the first one." Rowan lowered too quickly. Mud splashed up her jeans. "Again," Marisol said. "What's wrong with it?" "Water has no manners. If you leave a gap, it won't politely go around." Together, Rowan and the man shifted the bag until it lay across the seam below it. There were already 2 rows against the low side of the porch. "Wes Mercer," he said, straightening. "Rowan Bell." "I know." Of course he did. Everybody along River Road knew who belonged to Bellwether Landing, even if the Bells had never bothered learning everybody back. Wes was about 6 years older than Rowan, broad through the shoulders, with a pale scar cutting one eyebrow. She had seen him at Mercer Marine when Evelyn sent her for snaps, buckles, or waxed thread. He had usually been bent over an outboard motor with the concentration of a surgeon and the vocabulary of a man dropping a refrigerator downstairs. Warren shoved another bag toward them. "You two opening a social club?" "I was being neighborly," Wes said. "Carry faster. That's neighborly." Across the road, 2 women Rowan recognized from the bait shop were filling bags beneath a pop-up canopy. A gray-bearded man from farther upriver worked the shovel while another held the bags open. No one seemed surprised to be there. They had reflective vests, headlamps, work gloves, and a rhythm Rowan kept interrupting. She reached for the next bag. Marisol blocked her with the shovel handle. "Gloves." "I don't have any." Marisol pulled a spare pair from her pocket. They were purple, and 1 size too large. "Evelyn would haunt me if you bled on the burlap." Grandma didn't believe in ghosts. She didn't believe in people resting either. That never stopped anybody. Rowan pulled on the gloves. "How did you know I was here?" I saw Grant's truck at the house, and you walking downhill like a sad little pack mule. I wasn't sad. Then you naturally walk as if you're attending your own execution. Warren coughed into his fist. It might have been a laugh. Marisol lowered her voice. Did they put you out? Rowan looked toward the hill. The main house glowed through the trees, every downstairs window throwing warm yellow rectangles onto the lawn. From the cottage, it looked less like the place where she had lived than a picture somebody had hung too high. I claim this place, she said. Marisol waited. They said if it was my house, I should live in it. Wes stopped dragging the blue plastic. Warren swore with impressive economy. Marisol's face did not change. Tonight? I guess they thought ownership begins immediately. Family can make cruelty sound like a scheduling issue. I'm fine. Marisol looked past her at the dark doorway. Sure, that's why we're building you a wall. Rowan turned away before the woman could see her face clearly. Where do you need me? That answer, at least, Marisol accepted. They worked along the cottage's western side, where the yard dipped toward the road. Rowan carried until her shoulders trembled, then filled bags until her lower back burned, then carried again. Mud pulled at her shoes. Rain found the gap between her hood and collar and traveled in cold lines down her spine. The cottage sat lower than she remembered. From Evelyn's main house, it had seemed tucked into the hill. Standing beside it, Rowan saw how the land sloped from the cabin road, curved behind the cottage, then emptied toward the drainage channel on the far edge of the yard. Or was supposed to empty. Wes swept his flashlight over a dark tangle near the channel. Branches, reeds, plastic bottles, and dead leaves had collected against a narrow wooden footbridge. Water spread behind the blockage in a shallow, widening sheet. We need that open, he said. I'll do it. Marisol caught Rowan's sleeve. Not alone. It's a ditch, not the river. It'll still knock your legs out if it breaks loose. Wes took a long-handled rake from the truck. Rowan followed him before Marisol could assign someone safer. The drainage strip was thick with waist-high weeds. Evelyn used to send Rowan down twice a year with clippers, but not during the last year. There had always been something more urgent inside the house. Wes planted his boots at the edge and hooked the rake into the debris. Pull light until we see what's holding. Rowan grabbed a fallen branch and tugged. It did not move. Light, he repeated. I am pulling light. You have an angry definition of light. She let go. Do you give everybody this many instructions? Only people standing beside backed up water during a storm. I've lived here my whole life, and I've repaired motors my whole life. I still don't stick my hand in one while it's running. He worked the rake deeper and lifted. A mat of leaves peeled away. Water hissed through the opening. Rowan crouched and reached for a length of baling twine wound around the bridge support. Wes caught the back of her sweatshirt. Let go of me. Stop trying to become part of the drainage system. I can see what's caught. So can I. Your arms won't fit. Before he could stop her again, Rowan lay flat on the wet ground and reached beneath the lowest board. Her fingers found the twine, slick and drawn tight around sticks. She worked it loose one loop at a time. The water pressed cold against her sleeve. She thought of Evelyn asking in February whether the channel had been cleared. Rowan had said she would get to it when the weather warmed. Evelyn had stared at her over the rim of her mug. Water doesn't consult your calendar. At the time, Rowan had rolled her eyes. Now she pulled the twine free. The blockage shifted with a deep sucking sound. Wes seized Rowan under both arms and hauled her backward as sticks, bottles, and black water burst beneath the bridge. For several seconds the ditch roared. Rowan landed on top of him in the weeds. Marisol shouted from the cottage, "Everybody attached?" Wes coughed. More than I planned to be. Rowan pushed herself upright. I had it. You were half in the ditch. But I had it. He sat up, rain dripping from his nose. You're welcome. The backed-up water was already falling away from the cottage, streaming through the channel toward the marsh. Beneath the mud and weeds, flat stones lined the banks. Rowan had forgotten they were there. Warren came over with his headlamp shining directly into her face. Evelyn used to make us clear this every April. Us? Rowan asked. Everybody from the upper bend down. She'd call at 6 in the morning and say it was a work day. You could have said no. I did. Every year. Then I showed up. Why? Warren looked offended by the question. Because if Vega's end clogs, Pike's Yard floods. If Pike's Yard floods, the road washes. If the road washes, Mercer can't get his tow rig through. This isn't complicated. You skipped 3 houses, Wes said. They know what they did. Rowan looked toward the flowing channel. Nobody cleared it this spring. Warren adjusted the strap of his headlamp. Your grandma wasn't making calls. The words should not have hurt. They were only true. Marisol yelled that the river gauge had risen another 2 inches, and the men headed back toward the porch. Rowan remained by the bridge for a moment, watching brown water run over the old stones. Evelyn's absence had felt enormous inside the main house. It was in the empty bedroom, the silent oxygen machine, the untouched mug. Rowan had not understood that it also had a shape outside, that water gathered where Evelyn's attention used to be. Wes returned and held out a hand. Rowan ignored it and stood by herself. Worth a try, he said. They finished the sandbag wall shortly before 10. Wes laid plywood over a low window and secured it to brackets already fitted into the foundation. Rowan held the flashlight. Those were there before. Your grandmother had them installed after the flood in '98. How do you know? I helped her replace the bolts last fall. Rowan moved the light to his face. She never told me. She didn't issue newsletters. She issued instructions about how long to microwave soup. Wes tightened the last bolt. Maybe she figured you had enough instructions. Inside, Warren set a portable generator on the covered rear slab, safely away from the windows, then ran a heavy cord through the kitchen. Wes examined the cottage's breaker panel and refused to connect anything to it. Water got in here, he said. Power stays off until it's inspected. The refrigerator's already dead. It can remain dead without taking you with it. The work light turned the main room harsh white. Damage appeared everywhere at once. Silt crusted the floorboards. Cabinet doors hung open beneath the sink. Strips of wallpaper had peeled away and dried in curls. A coffee can full of rusted buckles lay on its side near the old sewing table. Rowan crossed to it and crouched. The machine was gone. The rectangular table remained. Its iron legs streaked orange, but the industrial sewing machine Evelyn had taught her to use was no longer mounted there. Grant had listed it with the workshop equipment. Warren brought in her trash bags before the rain could soak through. Marisol followed with a thermos and a grocery sack. Coffee, sandwiches, 2 clean towels, dry socks, she said. The socks are Warren's, so don't judge the color. They were a gift. They're orange. Deer can see you coming. Rowan opened her mouth to say she did not need food. Her stomach betrayed her with a sound loud enough to make Warren glance toward the walls. House settling? He asked. Marisol handed Rowan a sandwich. Turkey. Rowan took it. Her phone, buried in the canvas duffel, had gone dead during the funeral. Wes plugged it into the generator cord while Rowan ate standing at the damaged counter. The bread was thick, and mustard stung a place where she had bitten her cheek earlier. The phone lit with 6 missed calls. 3 from Celia, 2 from Grant. 1 from the number Rowan had called that morning about Evelyn's death certificate. A message from Celia appeared first. There are storms coming. At least take the upstairs room tonight. Sent at 8:41, more than an hour after she had packed Rowan's clothes. Below it was another. I'm serious, Ro. Grant's message read, Do not try to turn the cottage electricity on. Panel was submerged. Rowan locked the screen. Marisol had seen her face, but politely busied herself unscrewing the thermos lid. They want me to come back, Rowan said. Warren snorted. Amazing what weather does for hospitality. They're not monsters. No, Marisol said. Monsters are simpler. Rain hammered the roof. Somewhere beyond the plywood, the river made a low, continuous sound, not loud enough to be threatening, until Rowan noticed she could not hear anything beneath it. Wes stepped onto the porch to check the sandbags. Warren followed with a flashlight. Marisol stayed beside Rowan. You can sleep at my place, she said. That is an offer, not an order. If I leave tonight, I won't come back. You don't know that. I do. Marisol studied her, then nodded once. All right. The attic stayed dry in March. We'll move your things up there. Someone checks the gauge every hour. If Warren says go, you go. Is he always in charge? Only when Evelyn isn't here. Warren called from outside. I heard that. You were meant to. They carried Rowan's bags up the narrow stairs. The attic smelled of cedar, dust, and old canvas rather than mildew. Folded sawhorses hung from hooks in the rafters. Empty water jugs stood in a row beneath the eaves. A brass handbell sat on the windowsill beside a rain gauge and a grease pencil. The space did not look abandoned. It looked paused. Rowan wiped rain from the bell with her sleeve. Below, Wes called her name. She went down expecting bad news. He stood in the doorway, shining his flashlight at the sandbag wall. The water had reached the yard. It spread silver beneath the rain, slid along the barrier, and turned toward the newly opened channel. The cottage held. Rowan stepped onto the porch beside him. Across the dark water, more headlights appeared at the bend, moving slowly toward them. More sand? She asked. Wes nodded. More neighbors. For the first time since Celia set the trash bags on the porch, Rowan stopped feeling as if the whole hill were pushing her away. She pulled on Warren's bright orange socks, stepped back into her wet shoes, and went to meet the next truck. The next truck belonged to a woman named Alma Ruiz, who owned the bait shop and wore a clear plastic poncho over red pajamas. Her passenger, Theo Briggs, climbed out carrying a stack of empty feed sacks and a thermos large enough to supply a highway crew. "I brought decaf," he announced. Warren looked personally insulted. "Why?" "Some people value sleep. Name one." They resumed filling bags under the canopy. Rowan took her place at the folding table, holding sacks open while Alma shoveled. They worked without introducing her or asking why she was there. Alma complained about the price of worms. Theo claimed the weather station exaggerated rainfall to justify buying new equipment. Marisol called that the stupidest theory she had heard all year, which led to a spirited discussion of the previous year's stupidest theories. Their ordinariness unsettled Rowan. Her family had split apart that afternoon, and these people were arguing about worms. Occasionally someone asked her for twine or told her where to stack a bag. No one lowered their voice around her. No one said Evelyn would have wanted this. They simply behaved as if arriving in the rain were a responsibility too obvious to discuss. Around midnight, Warren checked the river gauge and announced that the rise was slowing. The sandbag wall had begun to seep at the seams, but the water stayed below the porch boards and continued draining past the footbridge. "You've got an hour before the crest reaches us," he told Rowan. "Then it should hold steady and drop." "Should? If you want certainty, take up checkers." Marisol made him repeat the evacuation route. Rowan was to leave by the upper footpath, not the road, because the lowest section of pavement flooded first. She was to take her phone, coat, and nothing else. "What about my things?" Rowan asked. "Things don't drown," Marisol said. "People do." The sentence landed harder than Marisol intended. She saw it and looked away toward the river. Rowan nodded. Upper path. By 1, Alma and Theo had gone home. Warren left to check the ditch behind his own house. Marisol remained until Rowan promised twice that she would not try to save furniture if water entered the cottage. Wes sat on the porch step with a flashlight between his boots. The rain had softened to a steady tapping against his hood. "You don't have to stay," Rowan said. "I'm on the 1 o'clock gauge. It's 1:10. I'm stealing company time. You don't work for anybody. That makes the theft easier." She sat at the opposite end of the step. Between them, runoff trickled down the boards. Beyond the sandbags, the yard had disappeared beneath several inches of water. The cottage seemed to be floating in a black field. Rowan rubbed her palms inside the oversized gloves. "What was my grandmother like with you?" she asked. Wes tilted the flashlight down. "That's a large question. She didn't talk about the neighbors much. She talked about everybody, usually while they weren't around to defend themselves." "That sounds right. She thought I charged too much. Did you?" "No, she thought everyone charged too much." Rowan smiled despite herself. Wes looked toward the attic window. "She hired me to reinforce those hooks up there. Said the old ones wouldn't hold a wet pump." "Why would a pump be wet before she stored it?" "That's what I asked." "What did she say?" "Life is long, Wesley. Use your imagination." Rowan laughed once, then pressed her lips together. The laugh felt disloyal, in a way crying had not. Wes did not fill the silence. He stood, walked to the sandbags, and checked the water level with a carpenter's pencil. When he returned, he made a mark on the porch post. "Still rising," Rowan said. "Half an inch. Is that bad?" "It's half an inch." "You and Warren both answer questions like broken instruction manuals. We learned from Evelyn." At 1:30, the water stopped rising. Wes marked the post again, then waited 15 minutes before calling it. Rowan stared at the 2 pencil lines until she trusted that the second was not higher. "You can sleep," he said. "Can you?" "Not here. Warren's socks are making me nauseous." She looked down at the bright orange wool showing above her shoes. "They're dry, then they've served their purpose." Wes gathered his tools but left the work light, extension cord, and generator. I'll come back after daylight to shut that down. Don't add fuel while it's hot, I know. Don't move it closer to the house, I know. If the rain picks up, upper footpath, phone, and coat, leave everything else. He nodded. You do know? The truck lights vanished around the bend. Rowan locked the swollen cottage door, though anyone could have pushed through the softened frame with one shoulder. Upstairs, she arranged 2 trash bags beneath her head and covered herself with a clean towel and one of the old canvas drop cloths. The attic boards pressed hard against her hip. Wind moved through a gap near the eaves, stirring the grease pencil on the sill. She reached for her phone. Celia had sent one more message. Please answer, so I know you're alive. Rowan typed. I'm alive. 3 dots appeared immediately. Come up to the house. Rowan looked at the attic rafters, the reinforced hooks, and the brass bell catching the work light from below. Water didn't come in. Are you sure? Rowan started to write that the neighbors had helped. She erased it. Celia would hear accusation in it, and maybe accusation was what Rowan meant. Yes. After a pause, Celia sent, Okay. No apology, no good night. Rowan put the phone face down. She slept in pieces, waking whenever the generator changed pitch or a branch scraped the roof. Once, certain she had heard Evelyn's water glass tapping against a bed rail. She sat upright and struck her head on a rafter. The sound had been the brass bell shifting in the wind. By dawn, the rain was thin enough to see through. Water had retreated from the bottom row of sandbags, leaving reeds and scraps of leaves stuck to the burlap. Mud covered the yard, but the porch was dry. Rowan descended stiffly and opened the front door. Grant stood outside in new black rubber boots, taking pictures with his phone. She watched him frame the sandbag wall, the plywood, and the watermark Wes had drawn on the post. Good morning, she said. Grant lowered his phone. You look terrible. You look waterproof. He glanced at the boots. Celia made me buy them last night. Of course she did. I called you. My phone was dead. You answered Celia. Eventually, Grant looked beyond her into the cottage. The work light illuminated every stained wall. Can I come in? It's my house. That wasn't an answer. Rowan stepped aside. He entered carefully, testing each floorboard before trusting it. Grant had been inside after the March flood, but only once, wearing a painter's mask and carrying a clipboard. Now he noticed the grocery sack, the generator cord, Warren's thermos, and the muddy gloves lined along the counter. Who did all this? The neighbors? All of them? Enough. Did you call them? No. His eyebrows pulled together. They just showed up. Rowan picked up 2 empty coffee cups. Apparently that's a thing people do. Grant heard the edge in her voice. I would have come if you'd called. You had my phone number. He walked to the sewing table and nudged a fallen coffee can with his boot. Rusted buckles clicked across the floor. Don't, Rowan said. He stopped. The remains of the room seemed to embarrass him. Grant did not like objects that refused to demonstrate their purpose. He turned toward the stairs. You really slept up there? Yes. This is insane. It stayed dry. That doesn't make it a house. What makes something a house, Grant? A roof? Heat? Your name on a spreadsheet? Usually plumbing helps. It had plumbing before the flood, and now the pipes may be split. The well pump hasn't run in months. The electrical panel is shot. Mold remediation alone could cost more than the place is worth. You've told me. He put his phone in his jacket pocket. I'm not trying to win. That's new. I came to make sure you were okay. You came to take pictures. That too. He pulled off one glove and rubbed his hand over his face. Without the confident gestures, he looked younger, almost like the brother who used to carry Rowan across the gravel because she hated walking barefoot. Come back up to the house, he said. Not forever, just until this gets sorted out. Celia told me to claim it. She was angry. So was I. That doesn't mean you have to commit your entire life to the worst decision you made during an argument. Rowan set the cups on the counter. You think I claimed it to punish you? I think you claimed it because you wanted us to see you were willing to suffer. The accuracy of it stung enough to make her cruel. And you came down because you wanted pictures proving you were right. Grant nodded slowly. Maybe. His willingness to admit it took the force out of her answer. He pulled the silver pen from his shirt pocket, though he had nothing to write on. He rolled it between his fingers. The offer still stands, he said. 8,000 now. Another 12 after refinancing. You can get an apartment, finish classes, buy a decent car. Grandma's truck is decent. The truck belongs with the rental business. Because you wrote it there. Because the cabins need it. And I don't. Grant looked at the floor. You're not hearing me? I hear you perfectly. Everything useful goes uphill. Everything broken comes to me. That's not what I said. It's what you wrote. Outside, a truck door slammed. Wes crossed the yard carrying a red fuel can, stopped when he saw Grant through the doorway, and set it beside the generator. Grant watched him through the window. You barely know these people, he said. Maybe that's why they helped. That doesn't make sense. It did last night. Grant put his glove back on. Think about the offer before we sign anything. I already did, for one angry afternoon. For 2 years. He stared at her, but Rowan could not explain it better. She was not choosing mold over money. She was choosing one place where neither Celia nor Grant could measure her contribution and call it imaginary. Grant walked to the door. The estate papers won't be ready for several days, he said. Until then, nothing is final. Bring them when they are. He stepped onto the porch, then turned. If you change your mind, nobody has to know. I'll know. Grant looked at the wall of sandbags. His mouth tightened, though Rowan could not tell whether he was angry at her, worried for her, or doing arithmetic again. After he left, Wes came inside without asking. He sniffed once. Is that family tension? He said, or did the refrigerator finally open? The refrigerator. Good. Family tension takes specialized equipment. He crossed to the breaker panel and began removing the cover. Rowan found a broom behind the kitchen door. Its straw had hardened into a crooked fan, but it still moved dirt. She started at the far wall. The first sweep raised a cloud of dried river silt. It caught in her throat and coated her tongue. She tied one of Marisol's towels over her mouth and tried again. Slower. Mud had settled into every groove in the floor. Beneath the sewing table, she found buttons, nails, a bent spoon, and one of Evelyn's white tailor's pencils worn down to the size of Rowan's finger. She rubbed it clean against her jeans. Then she placed it on the table where the sewing machine used to be and kept sweeping. The broom lasted 11 minutes. Its handle snapped just below Rowan's grip, sending her forward into a cabinet door. The door detached from one hinge and struck the floor with a flat wooden slap. Wes glanced over from the open breaker panel. You all right? I'm improving things. Fast, too. She held up the broken broom. Was that rotten? No. That was older than both of us put together. So, 46? He gave her a look. You said you were 26 at the marina last summer, she said. You remembered. You were complaining about insurance. That's how I charm people. Rowan used the shortened broom until Marisol returned carrying respirator masks and took it away from her. You can't dry sweep flood silt, Marisol said. I've been doing it for an hour. Yes, and now your lungs are tastefully decorated. She opened windows while Wes set a box fan on the porch facing outward. The cottage filled with moving air. Loose wallpaper fluttered. Dust lifted from the floor and streamed through the window in pale ribbons. Marisol made Rowan mist the silt with water before scraping it into piles. This produced mud, which felt like going backward, but the work moved more quickly once Rowan stopped coughing. Near noon, Warren arrived with pry bars and a moisture meter that looked older than Rowan. That thing works? Wes asked. I don't keep decorative tools. You own 6 hammers. Different hammers. They're all claw hammers. Different claws. Warren pressed the meter against the wall below the floodline. The needle jumped. He made a displeased noise, then checked higher. Lower 4 feet needs to come out, he said. Rowan stared at the faded wallpaper. Tiny blue flowers climbed from the baseboard to the ceiling, interrupted by the brown line of the March flood. All of it? Unless you want to grow mushrooms. Are they edible? No. Then take it out. Marisol studied Rowan's face. There's no prize for doing everything today. There's mold. There will still be mold after lunch. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. Eat. They sat on the porch with paper plates balanced on their knees. Marisol had brought chicken salad, sliced tomatoes, and a jar of pickles. Warren ate 3 pickles before touching anything else. Wes drank coffee that had gone cold. Rowan's phone rested beside her plate. No new messages from Celia or Grant. Their silence bothered her more than the missed calls had. Does everybody take turns feeding the person whose house floods? She asked. Marisol lifted one shoulder. People bring what they have, and if they don't cook, they bring ice. What if they don't have ice? They carry. Warren pointed his pickle at her. Or they stop asking how to avoid being useful. I'm not trying to avoid it. You're trying to turn help into a debt before you've swallowed it. Rowan looked at Marisol. Is he always like this? No, sometimes he naps. After lunch, they removed the first sheet of ruined wallboard. It came apart in damp gray chunks, exposing dark insulation and upright studs stained at the bottom. Warren pulled out a handful of insulation and dropped it into a contractor bag. Mask tight. Rowan adjusted the straps and kept working. Behind the wall, pencil marks crossed one of the studs at irregular heights. The lowest had nearly faded. Beside it was written 4/87. Above that, in black marker, 1/96. A line at Rowan's knee said 3/98, and another several inches higher read Isabel, 9/04. What are these? She asked. Warren leaned closer. Floods. Who's Isabel? Hurricane remnants. Came inland and stalled. Why mark them inside the wall? Evelyn marked everything. Wes pulled away another section. The marks continued across two studs. Besides some dates were initials Rowan did not recognize. Those are people, Marisol said. Who was staying here when the water came? Rowan touched the 1998 line through her glove. Grandma rented it then? Not during storms, Warren said. During storms? This was headquarters. Marisol smiled faintly. Headquarters meant Evelyn stood on the porch with that brass bell and told everyone else what they were doing wrong. She rang that? She rang it when the road closed, once for everybody to check in, twice if someone needed help. What did 3 rings mean? Warren cut a strip of insulation. That she'd dropped it. Marisol laughed so hard she had to sit on the windowsill. Rowan looked toward the ceiling, imagining the sound traveling through rain. Evelyn had told the same stories repeatedly near the end, but never these. She talked about Rowan's grandfather burning Thanksgiving rolls and Celia cutting her own hair before an interview. She complained about Grant's loafers. She had not said that strangers' initials lived inside the cottage walls. Do we cover them again? Rowan asked. Eventually, Wes said. She took out her phone and photographed each mark before they removed more wallboard. A car climbed slowly down the muddy drive. Celia parked near the road, studied the sandbags, then crossed the yard carrying Rowan's laundry basket. She wore old boots, but not old enough. Mud clung to them in perfect smooth bands. Marisol stood. Coffee? No, thank you. Celia looked at Rowan's mask, then at the stripped wall. I brought things you left. The basket held 2 sweatshirts, a phone charger, 3 library books, and the framed picture of Evelyn standing beside the river in a straw hat. Rowan had forgotten the picture was hers. For years it had sat on the dresser in her room. Thanks. Celia lingered. Marisol understood before Rowan did. She gathered the empty lunch containers and announced that she and Warren needed to inspect the upper culvert. Warren clearly had not known this, but left without correcting her. Wes followed after Celia looked at him twice. Rowan set the picture on the counter, facing away from the damaged room. Celia touched the edge of her mask. Are you supposed to be doing this yourself? I'm not. I meant without professionals. Warren knows what he's doing. Warren is 70. 68. He made that very clear. Celia glanced through the open window. The 3 neighbors had stopped beside Marisol's truck and were pretending not to watch. I'm glad they came, she said. Rowan pulled off the mask. Are you? That's a strange question. You sounded surprised last night. I was surprised. I didn't know people were down here. They've always been down here. That isn't what I meant. Celia walked to the exposed studs. Her eyes settled on the flood marks, then shifted away. Grant says the papers will be ready Friday. Good. You can still change your mind. Did he send you to say that? No. Did you come to apologize? Celia's chin lifted. Rowan wished immediately that she had not asked. An apology requested was only another thing Celia could refuse. I shouldn't have told you to leave last night, Celia said. But you did. Yes. You put my clothes in garbage bags. I didn't have boxes. Despite herself, Rowan laughed. Celia looked offended. That wasn't a joke. I know. The laugh collapsed into something painful. Rowan turned and picked up a piece of broken wallboard, though the contractor bag sat too far away. Celia said, You told me I came 4 times. You did. Do you know how many times Grandma told me not to come? Rowan faced her. She said you had everything handled, Celia continued. She said visits tired her. She said the cabins couldn't afford to have another person eating groceries and running the heat. That sounds like her. I believed her because believing her let me stay away. Rowan dropped the wallboard into the bag. What do you want me to say? Nothing? Then why tell me? Because you think I didn't come because I didn't care. I think caring from 3 states away was easier. Celia absorbed that without defending herself. Yes, she said. It was. Outside, Warren lifted the hood of Marisol's truck and pointed at something. Neither Marisol nor Wes appeared interested in the engine. Celia took a pair of work gloves from her coat pocket. I can stay for an hour. Rowan looked at them. They were new, yellow leather without a crease. You don't have to. I know. There's mold, I gathered. You'll ruin your pants. Then Grant can assign them a lower value. Rowan handed her a respirator. Celia worked 40 minutes before the first blister appeared. She did not complain. She held contractor bags open, removed nails from studs, and followed Warren's instructions when he returned from the entirely imaginary culvert inspection. At the end of the hour, she washed her hands with bottled water and left without asking Rowan to come uphill. Friday arrived as a stack of pages on Evelyn's dining table. Grant had placed colored tabs beside every signature line. He explained the property descriptions, the division of maintenance costs until the transfers were complete, and the list of equipment assigned to each parcel. Rowan listened with the white tailor's pencil in her coat pocket. The cottage, its narrow yard, and the drainage strip were hers. In exchange, she gave up her interest in the main house, cabins, workshop, shed, truck, and rental income. The terms looked worse in formal type than they had in Grant's handwriting. Celia sat in Evelyn's chair again. You don't have to sign today, she said. Grant capped his pen. We agreed not to do this. We agreed not to pressure her. I'm not. You put tabs on everything. Tabs are not coercive. Rowan turned to the equipment list. The sewing machine. Grant glanced at the page. Workshop. It was in the cottage, before the flood. We moved it uphill to save it. I moved it uphill, and you saved it. For Grandma. You can use it whenever you want, while you own it. He exhaled through his nose. We had this conversation. Rowan looked at Celia. Her sister's expression gave nothing away. What would you want for it? Rowan asked. I'm not selling it. I need it for cabin curtains and cushion covers. You don't know how to use it. I can hire somebody. The old insult rose to Rowan's mouth, hot and easy. She could tell him he would hire somebody to operate the one thing his sister already knew how to use. She could make Celia choose a side. Instead, Rowan took the silver pen from Grant's hand. She signed every tab. Grant gathered the papers slowly. Satisfaction did not brighten him as much as Rowan had expected. He kept aligning their edges against the table. Celia walked Rowan to the front porch. The lawn sloped away beneath a clear sky. From there, the cottage looked small enough to cover with one hand. You can still come up for dinner, Celia said. Am I invited, or do I have to own a chair? Celia winced. Invited, not tonight. All right. Rowan followed the path downhill, carrying her copies of the agreement beneath her coat. At the cottage, she tucked them into the highest plastic storage bin in the attic, below the empty water jugs and beside the brass bell. Then she sat at the bare sewing table and opened the employment listings on her phone. The Highway Motel wanted someone who could start at 5:30 in the morning. Rowan called before she could calculate how tired that would make her. A woman answered on the 4th ring with, Longview Motor Lodge. If you're calling about the ice machine, kick the bottom left corner. I'm calling about the housekeeping job. Oh. Papers shuffled. That thing's online already? I'm looking at it. Then I suppose it is? You have experience? Rowan looked around the cottage. A contractor bag leaned against an exposed wall. Mud streaked the floor. Her mattress was a canvas drop cloth and 2 garbage bags. I've cleaned rental cabins for 2 years. People are bears. Mostly people. Bears leave less toothpaste in the sink. The woman laughed. You have transportation? Rowan glanced uphill toward the truck she no longer owned. Yes. Can you be here Monday at 5:30? Yes. Ask for Denise. Wear shoes you don't love. After they hung up, Rowan stood very still, feeling both triumphant and slightly ill. The Longview was 7 miles away. She searched the cottage shed by phone light and found a rusted garden cart, 2 broken rakes, and Evelyn's green bicycle hanging from hooks. It had a wire basket, a wide seat, and tires so flat they had folded against the rims. Wes arrived the next morning to collect his generator. He found Rowan beside the bicycle with a hand pump between her boots. "No," he said. She kept pumping. "Good morning. You cannot ride that on Highway 6. I haven't told you where I'm going. There are only two directions from here. One is the river. I got a job at the Longview." He looked at the bicycle, then at her. "At 5:30 in the morning. How did you know?" Housekeeping always starts before people wake up and remember what they did to the rooms. "The job is 7 miles away." "Yes, 7 dark miles with logging trucks." "I'll get lights. Get a car. I'll pick one from the car tree." Wes crouched beside the rear tire and pressed his thumb into a crack in the rubber. "This won't hold air," I noticed. "The wheel's bent. Is anything here not ruined?" He spun the pedal. It made half a turn before the chain jammed. "Bell works," he said. Rowan struck the little chrome lever. The bell gave one tired ding. "Great. I'll warn the logging trucks." Wes stood. "Alma drives past the Longview every morning. Bait shop opens at 5. I'm not asking her for rides. I didn't say ask. That's usually how rides work. She's going there anyway. She's not coming back here at noon." "I am." Rowan stared at him. He lifted both hands. "I drive past the motel going from Mercer's to the marina yard. I can't build my work schedule around strangers. We're not strangers. You insulted my age. I made one joke. You also landed on me in a ditch. You pulled me. Details." She folded her arms. "What happens when you have something else to do? You find another ride, or you quit, or you walk. Monday's problem is Monday." Rowan hated solutions that depended on someone being kind. Kindness could be withdrawn without notice, and then everyone acted as if the stranded person had misunderstood the arrangement. Wes seemed to read some of that in her face. "Alma won't be offended if you say no," he said. "She'll be offended if you make her stop twice and aren't outside." Rowan agreed to 1 week. Alma arrived Monday at 4:52 in a pickup that smelled of coffee, damp wool, and night crawlers. A handwritten sign on the dashboard said, "No open bait containers," though 3 open bait containers rolled on the floor. "You can move those," Alma said as Rowan climbed in. "Where?" "Anywhere they won't escape." "Can they escape?" "Not if you don't upset them." Rowan held her feet very still for 7 miles. The Longview Motor Lodge was a 2-story concrete rectangle painted the color of weak tea. Half the letter L on the roadside sign had burned out, making it the Longview until sunrise. Denise Porter waited behind the front desk with a clipboard. She was a square-built woman in her 50s with silver hair cut close around her ears and blue reading glasses hanging from a chain. "You're early," she said. "My ride opens a bait shop." Denise wrote something down. "That explains absolutely nothing. Come on." She handed Rowan a maroon polo shirt, a ring of keys, and a wheeled cart that pulled hard to the left. The supply closet smelled so strongly of bleach that Rowan's eyes watered. Checkout rooms first. Stayovers after 9 unless they hang the service card. Sheets tight enough to bounce a quarter is nonsense somebody invented to make housekeepers miserable. Smooth is fine. Hair is not fine. If you find cash, jewelry, medication, or a weapon, don't touch it. Call me. What about anything else? Use judgment. That seems broad. It is. Denise trained her on 3 rooms, then watched Rowan clean the 4th alone. Rowan stripped the bed, checked beneath it, sprayed the bathroom, replaced towels, emptied trash, dusted, vacuumed, and remade the bed in 27 minutes. Denise inspected the sink drain. "You missed a coffee ring on the nightstand." Rowan wiped it. "You folded the toilet paper." "Is that bad?" "It's unnecessary." "Unnecessary takes time." Evelyn liked the corners folded. "Who's Evelyn?" "My grandmother." "Did she pay by the room?" "No." Then Evelyn could afford corners. By the end of the shift, Rowan's shoulders ached differently from carrying sandbags. She had cleaned 11 rooms and learned that adults left wet towels in bathtubs, on beds, over lamps, and once inside a microwave. She found $6 in tips, 1 unopened bottle of water, and a pair of expensive sunglasses she turned into Denise. "Ripped towels go in the blue bin," Denise said. "We cut them into rags." "You need rags?" Rowan hesitated. "A lot. Take 1 bag. If I see Longview towels hanging in your windows, I'll deny knowing you." Wes picked her up 12 minutes late in a truck cab cluttered with socket sets, boat catalogs, and paper coffee cups. "You survived," he said. "People are disgusting. Were you expecting news?" He drove her home without asking what happened at the motel. Rowan appreciated that until she realized he was watching her fight sleep. "I'm not tired," she said. "I didn't accuse you." "You looked over. There was a noise." "What noise?" "Like a goose dying politely." "I did not snore." "Good. Then there's a goose under the seat." At the cottage, he carried the bag of rags before she could stop him. Warren had left several bundles of reclaimed pine flooring beneath a tarp on the porch. A note taped to the top read, "Salvage from Pike back room. Dry, mostly straight. Don't get ambitious." Rowan read it twice. "Is this a gift?" she asked. "Ask Warren. Did he tell you to bring it? I helped load it. I don't want people emptying their houses into mine. He replaced that floor last winter. This was headed to the burn pile. So it's trash. It's 100-year-old heart pine. Then why burn it? Because Warren has a personal relationship with poor decisions." She ran her hand over the top board. Beneath chipped paint, the wood was tight-grained and solid. "How much will it cover? Half the front room, maybe. How do I pay him?" "Ask." Warren rejected money, but accepted Rowan's promise to help clear his back ditch before the next storm. Marisol traded 2 boxes of work gloves for help repairing the torn shade cloth behind her house. Alma declared the morning rides payment for not having to drink alone before sunrise. Rowan began keeping a list on the back of Grant's original yellow paper proposal. She crossed out his property figures and wrote names instead. Warren, floorboards, pry bars, meter, ditch work owed. Marisol, food, masks, gloves, shade cloth. Alma, 5 rides. Wes leaned over the sewing table and read it. "You know people aren't invoicing you." "I am. That's healthy. It's organized." Evelyn kept lists like this. She kept lists of everything. Yes. She once billed me 2 jars of peaches for not returning a ladder. "Did you return it?" "No." "Then you owed peaches." By the second week at the motel, Rowan's days had become a narrow channel between work and exhaustion. She left before dawn, cleaned until noon, came home, ate standing up, and worked on the cottage until darkness made precision impossible. Wes showed her how to test the exposed subfloor with Warren's moisture meter. "Below 15% before you cover it," he said. The needle hovered at 19. "It feels dry. Wood is a liar. I can't live with half a floor forever. You've had no wall for 12 days, I'm aware. Stack the boards inside. Let them adjust to the room." "For how long?" "A week." She waited 3 days. On the 4th, Wes did not come by. Rowan used borrowed spacers, watched 2 installation videos on her phone, and laid the first boards across the driest section. The old pine fit together stubbornly. She split one tongue, then another, but by sunset, she had covered a broad rectangle beside the sewing table. It was the first surface in the cottage that looked finished. Rowan swept it with Marisol's new broom and set Evelyn's framed picture on the table. The clean boards glowed honey-colored beneath the work light. She slept better than she had since the funeral. At 4:30 the next morning, she stepped downstairs and caught her toe on a raised seam. 3 boards had cupped overnight. A 4th bowed high enough to slide 2 fingers beneath it. Rowan dropped to her knees and pressed both palms against the wood. It did not move. She left for work without turning on the light. When Wes brought her home, she tried to keep him outside. "You're standing in the doorway," he said. "I'm tired, so go in. I'm going to." "Then why aren't you?" She shifted left. He shifted with her. "You're very annoying. I get that on evaluations." Wes looked over her shoulder and saw the floor. He stepped inside without another joke. He crouched, ran a hand across the raised boards, and reached for the moisture meter. 19? He asked. "It was 16 yesterday, before or after you decided not to check the section by the wall?" Rowan said nothing. He tested it. The needle climbed past 20. Wes sat back on his heels. "They have to come up. I can fix them. If you pull them now, maybe. Leave them. They'll split." "I did exactly what the video said. You skipped the waiting part. I don't have weeks for every stupid thing. The wood doesn't care. Stop saying things don't care. Wood lies. Water has no manners. Electricity wants to kill me. Does anybody around here talk like a normal person?" "Yes," Wes said. "They're all uphill enjoying plumbing." The words struck before he could take them back. Rowan grabbed the pry bar from the wall and drove it beneath the nearest board. The tongue cracked with a sharp report. Wes reached for her wrist. She jerked away. Don't. Slow down. I already ruined it. You ruined 4 boards. They weren't mine to ruin. They were gonna be burned. That doesn't make my time free. Her voice broke on the last word. She turned away, furious at her throat for betraying her. Wes remained crouched beside the buckled floor. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. He set 2 thin blocks beneath the pry bar so it would not crush the next board. Then he moved out of her way. Rowan knelt. This time, she eased the board upward a fraction at a time, until the old nails released without splitting the tongue. Wes caught the far end, but did not lift until she nodded. Together, they carried it to the porch and laid it flat beneath the tarp. The second board came up clean. The third resisted until Wes found a rusted nail driven sideways through the tongue. Rowan wanted to force it. Instead, she held the work light while he cut the nail with a narrow saw. They stacked each board on thin spacers beneath the porch tarp. By sunset, the clean rectangle was gone. Bare subfloor showed again, spotted with fresh scratches and the dark marks of Rowan's knees. One board had split beyond saving. Rowan placed both pieces at the bottom of the stack. Wes packed his tools without commenting. At the truck, he stopped with one hand on the door. What I said about everybody uphill was cheap. Rowan sat on the porch step. It was true. True and cheap aren't enemies. She looked at him. He scratched the scar through his eyebrow. You didn't install the floor badly? It buckled? You installed it early. There's a difference. Does the difference make it flat? No. It tells you what to fix. The answer sounded suspiciously like encouragement, so Rowan distrusted it. I shouldn't have ignored you, she said. Wes nodded. That was also cheap. She threw one of Warren's orange socks at him. He caught it against his chest. Why was that on the porch? It fell out of my shoe. How? Good night, Wes. He left the sock folded beneath the windshield wiper of her non-existent car. Rowan waited 7 full days before touching the boards again. Every afternoon she tested the subfloor in 6 places and wrote the numbers on an exposed stud. 18, 17, 17, 16. One damp morning sent 2 readings back up, and she nearly argued with the moisture meter before remembering Wes was not there to hear it. She cleared Warren's back ditch on Thursday. It took 3 hours and produced 2 bags of leaves, a hubcap, and a metal lawn chair missing one leg. I've been looking for that, Warren said. The chair? The hubcap? What did it come off? No idea. On Saturday, she helped Marisol remove torn shade cloth from a long wooden frame behind her house. Beneath it stood rows of potted herbs and flowering plants in various stages of recovery. You grow these? Rowan asked. I sell them at the farmer's market and to restaurants. I thought you just owned every tool on River Road. That's more of a calling. The replacement cloth had ripped along one hem before they finished stretching it. Rowan sat at Marisol's patio table and repaired it by hand with heavy thread and a curved needle. Her stitches landed even and close, each one angled like the last. Marisol watched from the other side of the table. You did that without measuring. I measured the first 4. With what? My thumb. Evelyn taught you? She taught me to take out every stitch that embarrassed me. That sounds restful. Rowan pulled the thread tight. She was nicer when the machine was running. She couldn't talk over it. At the motel, Denise noticed the raw patches on Rowan's palms and tossed her a pair of rubber-lined gloves from the supply closet. You're leaving fingerprints on my clean mirrors. I'm wearing gloves already. Those leak. These are motel gloves. They leak professionally. Rowan's first paycheck was smaller than the number she had multiplied in her head. Taxes had apparently claimed a cabin of their own. She deposited the check, bought groceries, generator fuel, moisture barrier paper, and replacement filters for the respirator. What remained would not cover the electrical inspection Wes had priced for her. She folded the receipt into her wallet anyway. Money had gone toward things with names. That felt better than watching it disappear through Grant's calculations. On the ride home, Wes was quieter than usual. A bundle of dark blue canvas filled the truck bed. What's that? Rowan asked. Boat enclosure. Is it supposed to look mauled? Owner caught a metal cleat pulling away from the dock. That didn't tear. It exploded. Can it be fixed? Rowan leaned through the open rear window to inspect the damage at a stoplight. The canvas had ripped beside the clear vinyl window. Several fasteners were bent, and the binding had peeled back almost 3 feet. Yes. How much? I don't know. You're meant to say a number. Why? Because the owner asked. Rowan turned slowly. You told somebody I'd fix it? I told him I knew somebody who could look at it. You brought it home. This isn't home. You know what I mean. He doesn't need it until next Friday. I said I'd ask. I don't have a machine. There's one in Grant's workshop. It's not mine. You're allowed to use it. How do you know? Grant told me. Rowan stared at him. You talked to Grant about me? I asked whether the machine worked. You could have asked me. I did. You said you didn't have one. I don't. You have access to one. That isn't the same thing. The light changed. Wes drove through the intersection. Okay, he said. I'll tell Russell it can't be done. Rowan looked back at the canvas. In her head, she could already see the repair. Remove the damaged binding, patch beneath the tear to carry the strain, restitch the vinyl with a longer spacing so it would not perforate. How much did you tell him? That I didn't know. How much would a canvas shop charge? $250, maybe $3. That's robbery. Good start. Continue. I could do it for $120. Materials? $30, unless those snaps are some strange marine size designed to punish people. They're standard. $150. Wes glanced at her. You just raised your price. I remembered people are disgusting. I believe that was motel people. It's spreading. Grant's workshop stood behind the uppermost cabin, a long cinder-block building with 3 green doors. Rowan had spent entire summers there beside Evelyn, cutting canvas on the central table, while box fans pushed hot air in circles. Now the fans were gone. So were Evelyn's coffee tins of fasteners, sorted by size in a system no one else understood. Grant had stacked them in plastic bins marked metal parts. The industrial sewing machine stood against the back wall beneath a tarp. You said I could use it, Rowan told him. Grant leaned against the cutting table, checking the time on his phone. I did. You also told Wes? He asked. People apparently do that. Grant looked at the rolled boat enclosure under Wes's arm. You're getting paid? If I can fix it? How much? Enough. Is that a trade secret? It became one just now. He removed the tarp. The machine's black body caught the overhead light. Gold lettering curved around the handwheel, worn away near the places Evelyn's fingers had touched most often. Rowan sat on the stool. Her right foot found the treadle automatically. She pressed once. The motor hummed, but the needle did not move. Grant's face shifted toward vindication. The belt's loose, Rowan said. She unplugged the motor, adjusted the belt, cleaned lint from the bobbin case, and opened the oil reservoir. Nearly dry. When did you last run it? She asked. I haven't. You said you needed it for cabin curtains. I haven't gotten to curtains, so it's been sitting here. It's protected. Machines don't like sitting. Grant crossed his arms. First wood lies, now machines have preferences. Rowan looked at Wes. He overheard, Wes said. You two are talking about me? Mostly your refrigerator. Grant found the machine oil where Rowan told him to look. She filled the reservoir, threaded a fresh bobbin, and tested the tension on a scrap of canvas. The first stitches looped underneath. She tightened the upper tension and tried again. The motor's low growl filled the workshop. For one sharp second, Rowan expected Evelyn to speak behind her, not in some gentle, ghostly whisper. Evelyn would have said her shoulders were too high and asked whether Rowan planned to sew with her neck. Rowan lowered them. She opened the damaged enclosure across the table and marked the patch with the white tailor's pencil. Grant watched her hands. You still have that? He asked. It was under the table. I meant to clean down there. No, you meant for somebody to clean down there. He accepted the hit without answering. The repair took 2 hours. Rowan removed the shredded binding, trimmed the damaged canvas, cut a reinforcement patch, and stitched around the clear vinyl without putting a single new hole through the old seam. Wes replaced the bent fasteners at the far end of the table. Grant left once to answer a call and returned carrying 3 cabin cushions. You think you can do something with these? He asked. The fabric was sun-faded and split along the piping. Yes, I need 18. Rowan stopped winding a bobbin. 18 cushions, 6 cabins, 3 each. They're making the rooms look dated. They are dated. That's why I'm asking. She ran the figures in her head. Fabric, foam for the worst inserts, zippers, cord, thread, hours. $2,700 if you buy the fabric, Grant laughed. Rowan returned to the bobbin. You're serious? He said. It's 18 custom covers. Grandma did them for the cost of material. Grandma owned the cabins. You're using my machine in my workshop. Take off 100 for machine rental. 100? Fine. 50. I meant that's not enough. Rowan turned on the stool. Do you want me to do the work, or do you want to prove you own the room where it happens? Wes suddenly became fascinated by a box of snaps. Grant picked up one cushion and pressed his thumb into the split seam. I can order new ones online for less. You should. They won't fit perfectly. Neither do those. You're not even going to negotiate? I just did. You laughed. Grant's mouth tightened. Family helps. Family. Rowan looked toward the workshop door, beyond it to the hill and the cottage roof visible through the trees. Family charges rent on the sewing machine. I didn't charge you. You reminded me who owns it before I sat down. Grant set the cushion back on the table. Send me the breakdown. If you want a quote, I'll send a quote. Fine. He carried the cushions away. Wes waited until the door closed. 2,700, 2,000 would be fair. Then why 27? Family rate. The boat owner paid Rowan $150 without bargaining. He ran his fingers over the reinforced seam, pulled hard against the new fasteners, and asked if she took other work. Rowan gave him her phone number before fear could make the decision for her. That evening, she added a new line to the list on the yellow paper. Wes, one referral. Beside it, she wrote, paid. Then she looked at the word, drew one line through it, and wrote, return one when I can. Her phone rang before she finished folding the yellow paper. The boat owner had given her number to a restaurant manager whose patio awning had torn loose from its frame. The manager wanted to know whether Rowan could repair it before Friday. How large is it? Rowan asked. 20 feet. She looked at the bare table. Send pictures. The awning was striped green and white, with a rip running 6 feet along one seam. It would barely fit across Grant's cutting table. It would not fit through the cottage's front door without being folded, rolled, and sworn at. Rowan quoted $300. The manager said, for sewing? For removing it, cleaning the repair area, reinforcing the seam, replacing the binding, and reinstalling it. There was a pause. Can you do it for $250? Yes. She spent Thursday night in Grant's workshop. Wes helped remove the awning and then left when Rowan told him she did not need an audience. At 11, while she was feeding the last section beneath the presser foot, the overhead lights went out. The machine coasted to a stop. Rowan sat in darkness with both hands on 20 feet of restaurant canvas. The door opened. Grant entered carrying a flashlight. What happened? She asked. I shut off the breaker. You saw the lights on. I thought you forgot them. My car isn't outside. You don't have a car. Exactly. He checked his phone. It's after 11. I have 6 feet left. I have painters coming at 7 to paint the sewing machine, to work in here. This is part of the property, Rowan. I need to know when you're using it. You told me whenever I wanted. I meant reasonably. Define reasonably. Not midnight? It isn't midnight. Grant looked at the awning spread across the table. You're turning my workshop into your business. For $300, apparently. $250, she said. That doesn't help your argument. He turned the breaker back on and stood beside the door until she finished. The machine's motor sounded different with him there. No longer Evelyn's familiar growl, but the noise of borrowed time. When Rowan lifted the repaired awning into Wes's truck, Grant locked the workshop behind her. He did not say the gesture was directed at her. He did not have to. The restaurant manager paid in cash and gave Rowan a sandwich wrapped in foil. By Sunday, the awning was tight over the patio again. The repaired seam disappeared into the original stitching unless a person knew where to look. Rowan knew. She stood on the sidewalk until Wes tapped the truck horn. You're staring at it, he said when she climbed in. It's holding. That was the plan. Plans don't always hold. No. That's why people stare. At the motel, Denise began leaving the torn laundry carts for Rowan because she repaired the fabric liners during lunch. Rowan sewed them by hand while sitting on an overturned bucket beside the commercial dryers. Put those hours on your timesheet, Denise said. I'm eating. You're working. I'm eating while I'm working. Then put down half an hour and chew faster. The motel's morning shift gave Rowan one kind of exhaustion, and the cottage gave her another. She could identify them before opening her eyes. Motel exhaustion lived in her wrists and behind her knees. Cottage exhaustion sat in her chest, already listing everything she had failed to finish. The properly dried floorboards went down flat. Rowan left expansion gaps, checked every section twice, and waited until Wes arrived before fastening the last row. He pressed the moisture meter to the wood. 13. I know. Did you test it? 8 places. He glanced at the exposed stud where she had written each reading. You've become a moisture enthusiast. I don't want to have this conversation again. Neither does the floor. She handed him a hammer. Together, they finished before dark. Warren came down to inspect his old boards and declared that Rowan had used too many nails. Marisol told him to stop hovering unless he intended to crawl underneath and remove them. No one asked you, Warren said. No one ever does. Imagine how quiet life would be if that stopped me. Rowan stood in the center of the finished section. It did not creak. The pine was mismatched and scarred, but warm against the rest of the damaged room. She moved the sewing table onto it. Nothing stood in the table's rectangular opening. The next morning, Grant texted a photograph of 18 new cushions lined up in cabin 3. Their navy covers looked crisp and expensive. Found a supplier, he wrote. $1,140 delivered. Rowan enlarged the picture. The cushions were 2 inches too narrow for the built-in benches. Grant had spaced them apart so the gaps looked intentional. Great, she typed. She erased it. Hope they work, she wrote instead. His reply came quickly. They're fine. Celia arrived that evening with a pot of stew and found Rowan sitting on the porch, searching used equipment listings on her phone. You know you can say they look bad, Celia said. Rowan turned the screen face down. What? Grant's cushions. He showed them to me like he'd personally woven the fabric. They're fine. They're the wrong size. He knows. He's pretending not to. That's between Grant and the benches. Celia set the pot on the porch rail. I didn't cook this. I wasn't going to accuse you. I bought it at the market. You can just say you brought food. Last time I brought food, you asked whether I was trying to apologize. Were you? No. I was trying to bring food. Rowan lifted the lid. The stew smelled of tomatoes and rosemary. Thank you. Celia sat beside her. She had begun wearing old jeans when she came downhill, as if the cottage required a uniform. Her blistered palm had healed into a pale patch. What are you looking for? An industrial machine. You have one. Grant has one? He said you could use it. Until 11. That sounds late. You two really are related. Celia accepted that. How much is a machine? Anything decent is $800 to $2,000. Anything cheap enough for me is either a scam or located in Oregon. Could you use a regular one? Not for canvas. I can lend you money. No. I knew you'd say that. Then why ask? Because sometimes you say no before you know what the question costs. Rowan put the lid back on the stew. Celia looked through the cottage door. The stripped walls, newly laid floor, and empty machine table were visible from the porch. The pencil flood marks remained exposed along one corner. Grant's changing the name, she said. Of what? The rentals? Bellwether Landing sounds old-fashioned. He wants Bellwether River Retreat. That sounds like a place that charges extra for bathrobes. He ordered bathrobes. Of course he did. He thinks we can double the nightly rate after renovations. Can you? I don't know. Celia rubbed her thumb across the healed blister. He's taking down the hedges beside the parking lot. Says they make the cabins look dark. Those hedges hold the upper bank. He says they're overgrown. They are overgrown. They still hold dirt. I'll tell him. He'll say I'm trying to run his business. Are you? No. The answer came too fast. Celia's smile was tired rather than amused. You sound exactly like Grandma. Rowan stood and carried the stew inside. That night, a new listing appeared 40 miles away. Industrial walking foot machine, table, and motor included. Upholstery shop closing. $550, Rowan called at once. A man named Lou Ferris answered. He asked whether she knew how to adjust foot pressure, change a bobbin case, and tell a timing problem from bad tension. Yes, Rowan said. Everybody says yes. Turn the hand wheel toward you until the needle rises 2 millimeters. The hook should meet the needle above the eye. Lou was silent. $500 if you can get it out by Saturday, he said. Rowan had $312 in her account after groceries. The restaurant manager owed her another $100 for 2 repaired patio panels. A boat owner had agreed to pay $75 for a zipper replacement. Her next motel check would arrive Friday. If every payment came on time, she would have $38 left. She told Lou she would be there Saturday. For 4 days, Rowan ate motel toast Denise allowed employees to take after breakfast service. She declined Celia's offer of a loan twice and accepted the stew only after writing Celia's name on the yellow list. "What are you going to put beside it?" Celia asked. "One pot, returned clean. That isn't payment." "I know. Do you?" Rowan did not answer. The machine stood in the back of Lou's upholstery shop among rolls of vinyl and foam dust. Its paint was chipped, the table scarred, and the thread stand leaned slightly left. Rowan tested it on 4 layers of canvas. The stitches remained even when she crossed a thick seam. Lou watched her listen to the motor. "You hear something?" he asked. "Belt slips at speed. New belt's $20, then $4.80. He smiled. "Evelyn Bell teach you to bargain?" Rowan's hand stopped on the wheel. "You knew her?" Everybody who sewed within 50 miles knew Evelyn. She borrowed a binding attachment from me in 2009 and returned it with a casserole I didn't ask for. "What kind?" "Bad." Rowan laughed. Lou accepted $4.80 but included 2 boxes of old needles and 3 partial cones of thread because he had already priced them for disposal. It was not charity. He made Rowan load the table herself. Wes had brought the Marina's flatbed trailer. He strapped the machine down, then retightened every strap after Rowan did it. "I know knots," she said. "You know sewing? I helped tie cabins before storms, and I'm still checking." On the drive back, he did not mention that she had spent nearly every dollar she owned. He only asked where she wanted the table. "At the cottage. Grant's workshop has room." "I don't." That wasn't an argument. Yes, it was. They carried the machine through the cottage door, with Warren directing from behind and Marisol directing from the front. Lou's table was too wide for the finished floor section, so Wes removed its top and fitted the machine into Evelyn's old iron base. It dropped into the rectangular opening with a 1/4 inch to spare. Rowan stared. "I measured," Wes said. "When?" "While you were telling me not to talk to Grant about you." "You planned this?" "I considered dimensions. Planning involves paperwork." He wired the motor to the one new outlet the electrician had certified safe, a raised temporary line Rowan had paid for with her first 3 motel checks. When she pressed the treadle, the machine came alive beneath her hands. The sound filled the cottage, bounced from the exposed studs, and traveled through the open windows. Marisol covered her ears. Warren complained that the belt was too tight. Wes leaned against the doorway, smiling. Rowan lowered the presser foot onto a torn work jacket Denise had brought from the motel. For the first time, she ran a stitch in the cottage without anyone standing near the breaker, waiting to turn out the lights. The first stitch ran crooked because Rowan was watching everyone watch her. She stopped, lifted the presser foot, and pulled the work jacket free. Warren leaned closer. "Tension's off." "Tension is fine. Stitch isn't straight. That's not tension. Something's off." "Yes, there are 4 people breathing on me." Marisol took Warren by the elbow. "Come criticize my tomatoes. They're emotionally prepared. I don't know anything about tomatoes. That has never limited you before." They left together, still arguing. Wes remained in the doorway. "You too," Rowan said. "I'm not breathing. You're smiling. I can do that outside." When he stepped onto the porch, Rowan reset the jacket beneath the needle. This time, the stitch followed the torn seam exactly. She reinforced the elbow, trimmed the loose threads, and folded the jacket over the back of a chair. The empty cottage had felt like proof of everything she lacked. The machine changed the scale of the room. Now the exposed walls looked unfinished rather than ruined. The bare cabinets looked temporary. Work waited in a neat pile beside the table. The motel jacket, 2 boat cushions, a canvas tool roll, and Marisol's market canopy. Denise inspected the repaired sleeve the next morning. "You used the wrong color thread. It's black." "The jacket is faded black." "That isn't a color. It is if you work around laundry. You said you wanted it strong. I did." Denise bent her arm and examined the stitching. "How much?" "Nothing." Denise took out her wallet. "You gave me the ripped towels. Those belong to the motel. You gave me extra gloves. Also the motel. You pay me for lunch repairs. Because wage theft is illegal." Rowan folded her arms. "Then $20. Denise handed her 30. "I said 20. I heard you. 10 is for arguing overhead." The motel staff began bringing repairs in paper grocery sacks. A desk clerk needed a zipper replaced. The maintenance man had a tool pouch with a torn pocket. Denise posted Rowan's number on the break room bulletin board after making her print it again, because, according to Denise, her handwriting looked like a distressed centipede. The jobs were small, but they led to other jobs. The maintenance man owned a fishing boat. The desk clerk's partner managed a landscaping crew with torn equipment covers. Alma placed a stack of Rowan's handwritten cards beside the bait refrigerator and told everyone the cottage shop was open by appointment. "I don't have a shop," Rowan said. "You have a machine. I don't have walls. Most customers won't test insulation." By July, people came down River Road carrying work jackets, awnings, boat seats, and things they described vaguely as canvas pieces. Rowan learned to charge for time, spent figuring out what those pieces were. She still cleaned rooms at the Longview 5 mornings a week. On sewing nights, she slept 4 hours. On cottage nights, she slept 5. Denise caught her remaking a bed with a fitted sheet turned sideways. "I'm reducing you to 3 days," she said. "You can't. I need the hours. I can, and I am. I haven't missed a shift. You tried to put a queen sheet on sideways. I fixed it. You stared at it for 2 minutes as if the bed had betrayed you." Rowan gripped the housekeeping cart. "If you cut my hours, I might have to quit. Then quit." The word made her stomach drop. Denise softened only enough to become more irritating. "You're earning more sewing than you earn here, not every week. So keep 3 days. What if the repairs stop? Then I put you back on 5. What if you hire somebody else? I already need somebody else." That's not reassuring. It isn't meant to be. Go clean 214. The sink drains slow. 3 motel mornings gave Rowan enough certainty to breathe and enough free afternoons to accept larger repairs. She paid for the damaged plumbing beneath the kitchen to be replaced. Wes and Warren mounted open shelves above the old floodline. Rowan covered the lower walls with smooth panels that could be removed and washed, leaving one narrow section open where the flood marks remained visible. She did not move her mattress downstairs. The attic felt safer, and safety had become difficult to distinguish from habit. A hard rain in mid-July exposed a new problem. Water rushed from the upper hill carrying mulch and pale clay. It crossed the cottage yard in a dirty ribbon before the channel caught it. Rowan followed the runoff uphill. 3 of the old hedges beside the cabin parking lot lay uprooted, their roots wrapped in burlap. Orange stakes marked a wider gravel area. A wooden sign leaned against the workshop wall beneath a tarp. Grant stood beside a rented loader, arguing with the operator about where to pile soil. "What are you doing?" Rowan called. Grant looked at her muddy boots. "Good afternoon to you too. You took out the bank, I took out overgrown shrubs. Their roots held the slope. The slope is fine. Then why is it in my yard?" The operator found sudden interest in a hydraulic hose. Grant walked Rowan away from the machine. "We're widening parking by 12 feet. The cabins need 2 spaces each. Water comes straight down here. There's a drainage channel, which fills with everything you scrape off the hill. I'll have gravel put in. Gravel washes. Not if it's graded properly." "Did you grade it properly before the rain?" Grant's jaw tightened. "Work isn't finished. Water didn't wait. I'll clean your yard. My yard isn't the problem. What do you want me to do? Put the bushes back?" "Yes. That isn't happening." He pulled the tarp from the new sign. Bellwether River. Retreat curved across a painted blue river. Beneath the name, smaller letters promised, "Rest, reconnect, return." Rowan read it twice. "What?" Grant asked. "Nothing. You're making a face. I naturally look like this. You hate it. I don't hate it. You think it sounds fake. Do you want my opinion or do you want me to say you spelled everything right?" Grant covered the sign again. "These renovations matter," he said. "Celia and I need this place earning enough to maintain the main house. You got the piece you wanted. I got the business. You don't get to manage both. I'm not managing your business. I'm asking you not to send it downhill." He looked toward the cottage. A customer's truck was parked near the road, and Marisol's canopy hung drying beside the porch. "Your shop traffic uses my driveway. The cottage has road access. Through the lower drive, which connects to mine. People turn before the hill, mostly." There it was, one of Grant's apparently harmless words, polished until it could hold whatever he needed later. "If you want to talk about access," Rowan said, "we can do that at the road meeting." "What road meeting?" "The storm meeting. Sunday." "Who scheduled that?" "I did," Grant laughed. "You?" Rowan felt heat rise in her neck. "Yes, I didn't mean you did." I meant you've lived down there 6 weeks. I've lived here 20 years. And suddenly you're running emergency management? I'm not running anything. Then what's the meeting? People deciding what they can do before the next storm. Grandma used to handle that. Grandma is dead. The loader engine idled behind them. Grant's expression changed at the bluntness of it. Rowan continued more quietly. That's why the cottage flooded. Grant looked at the orange stakes. I'll have the contractor put in a diversion edge before the next rain. Yes, I mean it. I heard you. On Sunday, 14 adults crowded into the cottage. Alma brought folding chairs from the bait shop. Theo brought decaf again and labeled the pot this time, which Warren called an act of aggression. Marisol taped a large sheet of paper to the exposed wall. Rowan stood beside it with Evelyn's brass bell on the sewing table. The names on the old lists had not matched the present road. People had moved, equipment had broken. Warren no longer had the grip strength to haul generators, though he attempted to conceal that by insulting anyone who offered. Rowan did not assign jobs. She asked who had working pumps, who owned chainsaws, who could drive at night, who wanted a phone call, and who preferred a knock if service failed. Warren knew the river gauges better than anyone, so Rowan gave him the weather list and a chair near the radio. I don't need a chair, he said. It's for the radio. The radio doesn't sit. It does now. Marisol volunteered her greenhouse as dry storage. Alma had ice, fuel cans, and a 4-wheel drive truck. Theo could operate a chainsaw, but admitted he should not climb ladders after dark. Wes rode everything where people could see it. Grant arrived 20 minutes late, still wearing work clothes. He stood near the door without taking a chair. I can supply the cabin generators, he said when Rowan asked. How many? 3, fuel, enough for 2 days. Wes added it to the sheet. Grant glanced around, perhaps expecting someone to question whether he belonged. No one did. Warren asked whether the upper parking work had changed runoff. Grant said the contractor was installing an edge and 2 drains. Need to keep them clear, Warren said. That's what drains are for. That's what people are for, Grant almost argued. Then he looked at Rowan and said, I'll check them. Near the end, Rowan lifted the brass bell. Marisol said Evelyn used this when the road closed. Everybody heard it, Alma said. Even over rain, 1 ring to check in, 2 if somebody needs help, 3 if she dropped it, Warren said. The room laughed. Rowan ran her thumb over the tarnished handle. We could still use it, Marisol nodded. If the phones fail, I don't want to be the only person who rings it. That quieted the room. Evelyn had kept the bell at her own window. Evelyn had held the lists in her own hand. People had trusted her, but trust and control had grown together until no one knew which one they were obeying. Rowan placed the bell in the middle of the table. Whoever sees the road close rings once, she said. Whoever needs help rings twice. Warren nodded first. After the meeting, Grant stayed while chairs disappeared into trucks. You did well, he said. Rowan folded the large paper. You sound surprised. I'm trying to compliment you. You should practice without sounding injured. He put his hands in his pockets. I meant what I said about the generators. I wrote it down. And the drains will be done Tuesday. Good. Grant looked at the removable wall panels, the raised shelves, and the machine humming beneath a half-finished boat cover. This place is starting to look like something, he said. It always looked like something. You know what I mean? She did. That was the trouble. Grant started toward the door, then paused beside the old flood marks. What do the initials mean? Who was here when the water came? He found a date at shoulder height and touched the stained wood. Grandma never showed me these. She didn't show me either. For a moment they stood beside the same missing person, without fighting over who had lost more. Then Grant's phone rang. He answered before reaching the porch, speaking brightly about bathrobes and upgraded river views. Rowan carried the meeting list upstairs and copied it onto a fresh board where everybody could read it. She left the original beside the brass bell. Outside, the new gravel edge shone pale on the hill. The hedges were gone, and the slope looked wider, cleaner, and strangely defenseless. The slope stayed bare through the rest of July. Grant's contractor installed 2 shallow drains and a low gravel ridge meant to turn runoff toward the upper culvert. The first time it rained, the ridge worked. Grant sent Rowan a photograph of water moving neatly along its edge. Satisfied? He wrote. Rowan replied, for now. He sent back a thumbs up, which somehow looked sarcastic. The cottage changed in smaller, less photographic ways. Rowan installed cabinet doors on lift-off hinges, so they could be removed before a flood. She stored thread, zippers, and fasteners on the raised shelves, all in clear bins with labels large enough to read during a power outage. The lower wall panels came off with 6 screws each. Warren tested one and complained that she had used the wrong screws. "You brought me those screws," Rowan said. "I brought you a bucket. You chose poorly from within it." She added a cordless driver to her list of things to buy. Wes found a broad work table at a marina auction, scarred by propellers and stained with varnish. Rowan paid for it herself and made him show her the receipt twice. It took 5 people to fit it through the cottage door, and once it was inside, the front room felt less like a damaged home and more like a place built around useful work. Orders spread across the table. Rowan repaired the zippered windows of a pontoon enclosure, patched 2 restaurant umbrellas, replaced reflective strips on road crew jackets, and rebuilt a tool belt Denise insisted was older than modern medicine. She began turning customers away from Grant's workshop without mentioning why. The industrial machine in the cottage was louder than Evelyn's, less graceful through tight corners, and entirely hers. Grant heard it whenever he came down the hill. He never asked to use it. One afternoon, a woman named Nadine Walsh appeared on Rowan's porch carrying a cardboard box of cleaning supplies. Nadine had cleaned the Bellwether cabin since before Rowan was born. She had a permanent stoop in her shoulders and the unnerving ability to spot a dirty ceiling fan from the floor. "Your motel need anybody?" she asked. "Probably. Why?" "Grant hired a service out of Millbrook. Says they can turn all 6 cabins in 4 hours. Rowan set aside the boat cushion she was measuring. "He let you go?" "He called it restructuring." "Did he pay you what he owed?" "He paid everything." "Grant is not a thief." Nadine shifted the box against her hip. "He just thinks a clean room is a clean room." Rowan understood what she meant. Nadine knew which cabin window stuck in damp weather, which water heater needed 10 minutes between showers, and where Evelyn kept spare keys after forgetting every place she had already tried. "Denise needs someone," Rowan said. "She'll act like she doesn't." "Is she mean?" "Efficiently. That's fine." Denise hired Nadine 3 days later and increased Rowan's sewing hours at the motel by reducing her housekeeping schedule to 2 mornings. "You're replacing me?" Rowan said. "I'm using people for the work they're best at." "That sounds almost kind. Don't spread it around." Grant's new sign went up in August. Bellwether River Retreat stood on 2 stone-faced posts at the entrance, with hanging baskets Celia watered every evening because Grant forgot. The cabin rates nearly doubled. So did the complaints. The outsourced cleaners made the beds tight enough to satisfy an imaginary quarter, but they missed mildew behind a shower curtain and left one cabin without towels. The new online cushions slid apart whenever anyone sat on them. Grant's bathrobes vanished so quickly he began charging replacement fees, which produced several angry emails and one bathrobe returned in a grocery bag. Grant worked harder in response. He answered messages at midnight, repainted trim himself, and drove to 3 stores looking for matching towel racks. He stopped wearing loafers and began wearing work boots so clean they still looked theoretical. Rowan found him kneeling beside the upper drain after a thunderstorm, pulling leaves from the grate with his bare hands. "You're supposed to wear gloves," she said. "I know where my hands have been. That isn't the only concern." He sat back on his heels. Mud streaked his forearms. "The cleaning company canceled tomorrow," he said. "Why?" "They overbooked. Nadine wouldn't have." "I know." Rowan waited for him to make the next part her fault. Instead, Grant looked at the water moving through the grate. "You were right about the slope." She almost said, "I know." The words would have been accurate and cheap. "The drains help," she said. "They need cleaning every time it rains." "Yes. Nobody mentioned that. Drains are like rooms. They stay functional when somebody keeps touching them." Grant gave her a tired look. "Did Nadine tell you?" "She didn't have to." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Can your motel spare anybody tomorrow?" "That's not how people work. I'm asking whether anyone wants paid hours." "What rate?" He named one lower than the motel paid. "No." "Rowan, you doubled the cabin rate, and doubled almost every cost. Then cleaning is one of your costs." Grant stood. "Fine. Name the rate." She did. "That's ridiculous. That's what Denise pays people who know what they're doing. You clean rooms. Not for you." He walked away, then turned back. "Ask them." Nadine agreed to help for the rate Rowan named, plus mileage. She cleaned 4 cabins, documented 3 maintenance problems, and left Grant a list written in letters large enough to resemble a threat. Grant paid without complaint. Celia came downhill after dark, carrying the empty stew pot. Rowan had finally returned. "He says you extorted him," she said. "I named an hourly rate. He says it was hostile. Nadine named the mileage." Celia sat at the broad table and watched Rowan replace a zipper in a canvas gear bag. "The numbers aren't doing what he expected," she said. "What numbers?" "Bookings, costs, everything. It's August. People come to the river in August. They come on weekends. He priced out the people who used to stay for 2 weeks. Then he can lower the price. He says lowering it now makes the place look unsuccessful." Rowan guided the canvas beneath the presser foot. "Maybe it is unsuccessful. He's trying." "I know." Celia seemed surprised. Rowan stopped the machine. "Grant works hard. He always has. He just thinks working hard means everybody else is standing in his way." "You sound like Grandma. You need a second observation." Celia smiled. "You look tired. That's the same observation. Come up for dinner tomorrow." "Who's cooking? Grant?" "No, he can cook. He can heat. He's making chicken. He'll cook it until it gives information. Please." The single word changed the invitation. Rowan looked at Celia's hands resting on Evelyn's old table. "All right," she said. "But I'm not discussing rates, drains, or the fact that my house needs plumbing. Your house has plumbing. It has cold water and optimism. Dinner at 7. Grant's chicken was dry, but not as dry as Rowan had predicted. Celia made potatoes. They ate at Evelyn's dining table without the legal pad, colored tabs, or sugar bowl. The bowl had been moved to the kitchen shelf. For 20 minutes, they discussed weather, cabin paint, and whether Warren deliberately aimed his riding mower toward tourists. Then Grant asked how much Rowan would charge to alter 18 cushion covers. Celia put down her fork. "You lasted 21 minutes. "The gaps look bad," Grant said. "They looked bad in July." "I know." Rowan took a drink of water. 700. To narrow covers? To open 18 covers, resize them, reset 18 zippers, and close them. 5, 650, 6, plus materials. He considered. Done. The bargain should have felt like victory. Instead, Rowan noticed the tired half-moons beneath his eyes and wondered how much it cost him to ask. Grant brought the cushions down himself the next morning. He stacked them along the cottage wall and looked at the new work table, the shelves, the removable panels, and the narrow bed Rowan had finally moved downstairs. "You're sleeping here now?" "Mostly." "Why mostly?" "The attic doesn't have spiders at face level. I thought the attic had mice. They respect boundaries." He pointed at the meeting list beside the brass bell. "You added inspection dates, so people remember. My generators are checked. Warren said one had old fuel. Warren says bottled water expires. It does." "Water?" "The bottle." Grant shook his head. "You've all become very intense. We were always intense. You were 3 states away." He absorbed the remark without flinching this time. "I'll clean the drains Thursday," he said. Rowan marked it on the board only after he left. Work on the cushion covers ran late. Wes arrived at 9 carrying takeout containers and found Rowan hunched over the machine. "You missed dinner," he said. "I ate." He examined the empty cracker sleeve beside her elbow. "You grazed." "I have 6 covers left. 5. "You counted that one twice." She looked at the stack. He was right. Wes placed a container near her hand. "Chicken and rice." "I can't put food on Grant's fabric. That might improve it." She shut off the machine. They ate on the porch. Crickets pulsed in the weeds, and warm air rose from the muddy road. The new retreat sign glowed faintly uphill beneath a solar light. "Is this on the yellow list?" Wes asked. "The food?" "The ride, food, moving the machine, removing the awning, checking your floor, sitting here while you decide whether rice creates emotional debt." "I don't think rice creates emotional debt." "Good. We're growing." She set down her fork. "Why do you keep helping?" "Because I like you." The answer arrived without decoration. Rowan looked toward the river. "You don't have to say anything," he added. "That feels like another thing I owe." "It was information, not an invoice." She laughed softly. "You practiced that?" "For weeks." When she looked back, he was close enough that she could see the pale line through his eyebrow. He waited. Rowan kissed him first. It was brief and awkward because she still held the plastic fork. Wes bumped his knee against the porch rail and swore. Rowan laughed into his shoulder, and he laughed too. The brass bell rang inside the cottage. They separated at once. A second ring followed. Rowan was through the door before she remembered there was no storm. Warren stood beside the table, with one hand on the bell and the weather radio in the other. "You could knock," she said, breathless. Door was open. "You rang twice. I need help." "With what?" Warren set the radio on the table. A tropical system moving inland had changed direction overnight. The forecast called for 3 days of rain beginning Friday, with the heaviest band expected directly over the river basin. Rowan looked at the inspection board. Grant's drain check was marked for Thursday. Outside, wind moved through the bare slope where the hedges used to be. It made no sound at all. Warren switched the radio volume higher. The announcer's calm voice described saturated ground, stalled bands of rain, and possible river flooding as if discussing ingredients in a recipe. "How much?" Rowan asked. 5 inches likely," Warren said. 8 possible. More if it stalls. Wes stepped beside the work table. "Current river level. Low enough. For now." Rowan took the meeting sheet from the wall. Warren pointed at it. "I called the first 4 names. You called Marisol? She's checking the greenhouse tarps. Alma, fuel and ice. Theo, chainsaw and bad coffee." Rowan glanced at Wes. The fact that they had kissed seemed to be standing between them, wearing a reflective vest. "I'll check the cottage pump," he said. "I'll test the upper footpath." Warren looked from one to the other. "Did I interrupt something?" "Yes," Rowan said. "No," Wes said at the same time. Warren picked up the radio. "Weather's getting worse, and apparently so is my hearing." He carried the forecast list to the chair Rowan had assigned him. Wes knelt beside the low storage cabinet and began removing the pump. Rowan went outside to make calls. Denise answered from the motel's laundry room. Machines thundered behind her. "You're not coming Friday?" Denise said after Rowan explained. "I can come tomorrow." "You're not coming tomorrow either. I need the hours. You need your house. The motel needs, Nadine has it. If the highway floods, I'm closing the lower rooms anyway. You can't just close rooms. I own several keys and a bad attitude. Watch me." Denise hung up before Rowan could argue. The road network moved with less confusion than it had during the cottage's first storm. People knew where the empty sandbags were stored, who had shovels, and which pumps had been tested. Warren recorded check-ins with the solemnity of a military dispatcher while eating crackers over the radio. Rowan and Wes dragged the cottage pump onto the porch. It coughed twice, expelled a dead beetle, and started. "Good," Wes said. "Should it sound like that?" "It's a pump. It should sound unhappy. Everything you own sounds unhappy." "My truck sings." "Your truck screams when you turn left. It has range." They carried the industrial machine upstairs next. Rowan removed the head from its table, wrapped it in an old motel blanket, and held her breath while Wes and Theo maneuvered it through the attic opening. "You can let go," Wes said once it rested beneath the eaves. "I am letting go. You still have both hands on it. I'm confirming." "With your fingerprints?" Rowan released the machine. All customer work went into plastic bins on the attic shelves. Thread, zippers, paper patterns, and receipts followed. The lower cabinets lifted free of their brackets just as Evelyn had intended. By evening, the cottage's first floor looked stripped and ready to surrender without being destroyed. They laid the removable wall panels flat upstairs. Warren inspected the remaining fasteners and said nothing, which Rowan accepted as praise. Grant texted at 6. Drains checked. Both clear. She read the message twice, then walked uphill anyway. The newly widened parking lot was full. 5 guest vehicles sat in front of the cabins, including a convertible beneath a fitted cover. Fresh mulch spread across the bare slope. The diversion ridge curved neatly toward 2 metal grates. Grant stood in the lower cabin doorway, carrying folded towels. "You checking my homework?" he asked. "Yes, at least you're honest." They walked the ridge together. One grate held a thin layer of leaves. Grant pulled them away with a gloved hand. "I've told the guests about the forecast," he said. 3 are leaving tomorrow, and the other 2? One says they came for a quiet, rainy weekend. They may get half of that. I offered refunds. Rowan looked at him. "You did?" "I'm not holding people hostage for a booking fee." That sounded almost responsible. "Don't spread it around." The phrase was Denise's. Hearing it from Grant made Rowan smile before she could stop herself. They reached the edge of the main house lawn. Celia was carrying flower pots from the porch into the garage. "Did she ask for help?" Rowan asked. "She said she had it. That wasn't my question." Grant set down the towels. "I'll help." Celia refused for 30 seconds, then allowed both of them to carry the heaviest pots. Inside the garage, storm supplies covered a folding table: batteries, flashlights, bottled water, first aid supplies, and enough canned soup to survive a siege. Celia had labeled every box. Grant pointed at the labels. "Who does that remind you of?" "Neither of you is funny," Celia said. Rowan checked the main house's portable pump. It started on the first pull. Grant had fueled both cabin generators and moved outdoor furniture into the workshop. They were prepared. That frightened Rowan more than if they had been careless. Celia followed her to the porch when she left. "Is the cottage safe?" she asked. "As safe as it can be. You can stay here. I'm not leaving it empty." "I knew you'd say that." "Then why ask?" "Because apparently asking still matters." Rowan looked at her sister. Celia folded her arms against the cool wind. "If it gets bad, I don't want us arguing about who has the right to help." "Who's arguing?" "You." Silently, constantly. "I don't do anything silently." "Fair." A loose strand of Celia's hair blew across her face. She tucked it behind her ear. "I was cruel that night," she said. Rowan's gaze went toward the porch boards where the black trash bags had sat. "Yes. I thought if you stayed, I would keep being the person who left. You did leave." "I know." The admission had grown easier for Celia. Hearing it had not. "I don't need you to make that night different," Rowan said. "You can't." "What do you need?" "I don't know yet." Celia nodded. "All right." Rowan started down the path. "Row?" She turned. "If the bell rings twice, I'm coming whether you ask correctly or not. That's what twice means." The first rain reached them Thursday night. It tapped gently on the roof while Rowan and Marisol filled water jugs at the cottage sink. By dawn, the tap had become a steady drumming. Water moved through the drainage channel, dark but orderly. Rowan made coffee at the broad table. People stopped in to check the board, leave dry clothes, or report changing conditions. Warren sat beside the radio, with a yellow blanket over his knees, and objected every time someone asked whether he was warm. Alma brought ice. Theo brought coffee so strong, Warren accused him of hiding the decaf inside it. Wes arrived carrying a box of dry food, and did not mention the porch kiss. He also did not leave. At noon, the upper drain was clear. At 2, Grant reported water flowing correctly along the gravel ridge. At 4, the forecast increased to 9 inches possible. The final guests checked out. Grant did not charge them. By midnight, rain fell hard enough to flatten the river grass. Rowan checked the cottage yard every half hour. The sandbag wall held. The channel rose but continued moving. Pumps ran at Marisol's greenhouse and Alma's storage shed. Warren marked river levels on a clipboard. 6 inches before the lower road goes, he said. How long? Depends where the rain falls. It's falling here. It's falling everywhere. At 3 in the morning, a single bell note cut through the rain. Rowan ran to the work table. The brass bell was still there. Someone else had rung. Alma's voice came over the radio a moment later. Lower roads covered at the bend. No vehicles through. Warren marked the time. Rowan looked at the bell. She had not controlled the signal. She had not needed to. The system had worked beyond the reach of her own hands. The relief lasted until Wes opened the door and water pushed across the porch around his boots. They added another sandbag row. Rowan checked the footbridge with a rope secured around her waist and Wes holding the other end. Branches had collected against the upstream rail, but the channel still passed beneath them. Clear enough, Wes shouted. For now. Don't start. What? You're talking like me. They retreated inside. Rain continued through Friday morning. The cottage floor remained dry. Muddy water surrounded the lower yard, flowed along the wall, and turned toward the marsh exactly as they had prepared it to do. Uphill, the pale gravel edge began to bleed. Rowan saw it through binoculars from the attic window. Thin brown streams crossed the new parking lot and joined below the cabins. Grant and Celia, small in yellow rain jackets, moved between the drains with rakes. At 11, Grant radioed that the grates were clearing. At 11:40, he reported runoff over the ridge. At noon, the storm stalled. The weather radio repeated the same warning every 15 minutes. The river rose. The channel widened until water touched both banks. People came to the cottage wet, checked their names off the board, and left with pumps or fuel. Marisol moved her remaining plants onto raised benches. Theo cleared a fallen limb from Pike's Drive. Wes drove the tow rig through the upper path to pull Alma's truck from mud. Rowan stayed at the table, coordinating equipment and hating every minute she was not outside. Near dusk, Grant entered without knocking. Water streamed from his jacket. Mud covered his boots to the ankles, and one glove was missing. "The lower drain collapsed," he said. "What do you mean collapsed?" "The gravel gave way around it. The pipe's still there, but everything's washing over." "Where's the water going?" "Across the lot, behind cabins 5 and 6. "Toward the main house?" "Some of it." Warren looked up from the radio. "Main house pump running?" "Yes, cabin generators. 2 running, 3rd won't start." Wes came through the rear door carrying fuel. Grant turned to him. "I need another pump." "Marisol has the last spare," Rowan said. "Her greenhouse is using it." "I know." Grant pushed wet hair from his forehead. "The main house basement is taking water around the window wells." Celia's promise returned to Rowan. "If the bell rings twice, I'm coming." Rowan looked at the board. Every piece of equipment had a name beside it. Every neighbor had damage of their own. The cottage was dry. Grant followed her gaze toward the river, then toward the hill he had widened and cleaned and made defenseless. His voice dropped. "I need you, Ro." Rowan held Grant's gaze for one breath. Then she picked up the brass bell and rang it twice. The sound struck the cottage walls and traveled into the rain. Warren reached for the radio. "What are you requesting?" "Anyone who can leave their property safely. Upper hill. Sandbags and shovels." "You heard her," Warren said into the microphone. "Check in before moving. Do not cross the lower road." Grant's shoulders dropped, not with relief exactly. Relief would have been cleaner. This was the sag of somebody who had expected to be refused and did not know what to do with mercy. Rowan pointed at him. "Tell me everything, not the version that sounds manageable." The parking ridge washed through near the second drain. "Water's running between 5 and 6. 5 has water under the door. 6 is dry so far. The main house pump is keeping up with the basement, barely." "Where's Celia?" "At the house. Alone?" "She told me to check the cabins." "Of course she did." Rowan pulled on her raincoat. "Wes, I need the tow rig on the upper path. We can't carry enough sandbags uphill by hand. Already fueled." "Theo has the chainsaw?" Warren checked the board. "With Pike. Tell him bring shovels instead. No cutting unless something's down." Grant stepped aside as Rowan passed, then caught up on the porch. "What should I do?" The question stopped her more effectively than his hand could have. Grant always arrived with an answer. Even wrong answers came polished. "Open the workshop," she said. "Every door. Get the cabin generators under cover and put all your long extension cords where people can see them." He nodded. "Grant." "What?" "You follow the board. You don't pull equipment because you think the cabins deserve it more." His face tightened, but he said, "All right." They took the upper footpath because the road below had disappeared beneath moving water. Rain struck Rowan's hood hard enough to blur her hearing. The beam from her headlamp bounced across roots, wet stones, and the yellow grass flattened beneath runoff. Wes stayed behind her. Grant slipped once, caught a branch, and kept moving without complaint. At the top of the path, the damage looked larger than it had through binoculars. The widened parking area had become a shallow brown river. Water swept across fresh gravel, carrying mulch, sticks, and fist-sized stones toward the cabins. The diversion ridge had opened in the center like a broken seam. Cabin 5 stood in the flow. Water curled around its front steps and slid beneath the door. Grant moved toward it. "Not yet," Rowan said. "There's new flooring in there. The main house is downhill from all of this. If we block the cabin, then where does the water go?" He looked along the slope, toward the house. Rowan walked into the current. It pushed against her shins with surprising force. Beneath the muddy water, gravel rolled under her boots. "Rowan," Wes warned. "I'm looking." She traced the path of the runoff with her light. The second drain's metal grate was gone, buried or washed free. Water struck the collapsed edge, split around a mound of loose gravel, and recombined below the cabins. The original ground beyond the parking extension still dipped toward the upper culvert, but Grant's new ridge separated the water from it. "We need to open this," Rowan said. Grant joined her. "Open what?" "A trench from the break to the culvert. Across the parking lot?" "Yes." "That'll take out the new base. The storm's already taking it out." "Can we sandbag along the cabins instead?" For how long? And then we send everything at the house. Wes planted the blade of a shovel into the loose gravel. She's right. Give the water somewhere cheaper to go. Grant stared at the parking area he had paid to widen. Rowan watched the arithmetic move across his face. How wide? He asked. 3 feet to start. Wider if it backs up. He took the shovel from Wes. Show me. Rowan scraped a line through the mud toward the old drainage dip. Grant drove his shovel into the new gravel. The first cut looked insignificant. Then water found it. A thin stream slid into the groove and began tearing at the edges. Wes widened the exit, while Grant and Rowan cleared gravel from the center. Within minutes, the stream became a channel. Theo arrived carrying 2 shovels and a pickaxe. Alma followed with Marisol in her truck, the bed stacked with sandbags from the cottage supply. You all leave anything for us to do? Alma shouted. Sandbag, the uphill side of 6, Rowan called. Not 5. 5 needs to drain. Grant looked at the water already entering cabin 5. Let it flood less than the main house. The decision hurt him. Rowan saw it and did not soften it. Marisol climbed from the truck. Greenhouse pump is steady. Pike's drive is clear. You brought the spare? Grant asked. There is no spare, Marisol said. There is a pump currently preventing my livelihood from floating into the river. I wasn't asking you to give it up. You looked at it emotionally. Theo laughed and handed Grant the pickaxe. More headlights appeared along the upper road. People Rowan knew only by last name arrived in rain gear, carrying tools. Nadine came with rubber squeegees and a wet vacuum powered from one of Grant's generators. She went straight to cabin 5. Floor's already gone, she told Grant after looking inside. We pull furniture now or lose it too. Grant hesitated. Nadine snapped her fingers. Owner later, lift now. He obeyed. They carried mattresses, chairs, and dressers from cabin 5 into the workshop while water crossed the floor. Nothing was arranged neatly. Grant's labeled storage bins disappeared behind wet furniture and rolled rugs. His new bathrobes became padding beneath table legs. Rowan returned to the trench. It had widened to nearly 4 feet, cutting a brown scar through the parking lot. Water rushed toward the old culvert, but the flow behind cabin 6 kept growing. Debris in the culvert, Wes said. They followed the channel to its outlet. Mulch and landscape fabric had wrapped around the culvert mouth, forming a thick black mat. Rowan hooked it with the pickaxe. It stretched but would not release. Wes tied a rope around the mass and secured the other end to the tow rig. Slow, Rowan said. If it releases at once, the pipe may take the whole bank. I know. Everybody says that to me. You've become instructional. She stepped back as he tightened the rope. The landscape fabric peeled away by inches, bringing branches and clumps of mulch with it. Water sprayed through the opening. Wes stopped, reset the angle, and pulled again. The blockage broke free. The culvert took the released water with a hollow roar. The new trench dropped several inches almost immediately. Behind them, Grant let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Rowan turned. He was standing in the rain beside the ruined edge of his parking lot, one arm around a cabin chair. For the first time since Evelyn died, he looked nothing like a man presenting a plan. Don't celebrate yet, Warren said over Rowan's radio. River's still rising. A second voice broke through, distorted by static. Water at the main house back steps, Celia said. Pumps running, but the basement window wells are full. Rowan grabbed 2 shovels. We need a diversion above the house. Grant dropped the chair. The main house lawn had become a web of running water. The paths Rowan used to cross barefoot were gone beneath muddy sheets. Celia stood at the basement doors, dragging a coil of hose. She saw Rowan and shouted, I have it! No, you don't. I can keep the windows clear. You can't clear them faster than the hill fills them. Grant reached the pump. Where's the discharge hose going? Side yard. That drains back here. I know that now. They extended the hose toward the old garden swale, but water continued to press against the basement windows. One pane bowed inward at the center. Rowan looked uphill. The trench had diverted much of the parking runoff, but water still came around cabin 5 and crossed the lawn in 2 broad streams. Sandbags, she said. We build a V above the house. Point it toward the garden swale. How many? Alma asked. All of them. The line formed without anyone directing it. Sandbags came out of truck beds and passed from hand to hand. Theo to Nadine. Nadine to Marisol. Marisol to Wes, Wes to Rowan. Grant worked on Rowan's other side, stacking each bag where she pointed. These were not the people who had come to save her cottage because Evelyn once called them. Several had met Rowan only during the road meeting. Nadine had lost her cabin job. Alma's shop was surrounded by water. Marisol's greenhouse pump might fail while she stood on the Bell lawn. Still, the line held. Grant looked down at once, his face streaked with rain and mud. "Why are they doing this?" he asked. Rowan shoved a bag into place. "Ask them later." Marisol heard anyway. "Because Rowan came when it was our turn," she said. "Now lift with your knees." The first arm of the barrier reached the garden swale. Water struck it, climbed, and spilled through two low seams. Rowan dropped to her knees and pushed loose sand into the gaps. Wes added another bag above her hands. The flow turned, not all at once. It resisted, curled around the lower edge, and searched for another way. The barrier shuddered under the pressure. Then brown water began moving sideways across the lawn, away from the basement windows and toward the swale. Celia stood at the back steps, both hands over her mouth. "Pump's gaining!" Grant shouted from below. "Window wells are dropping." A crack sounded uphill. Everyone froze. Part of the parking ridge slumped into the trench, sending a surge through the new channel. It struck the culvert, jumped its bank, and carried 3 sandbags toward the trees. The barrier above the house held. Then the brass bell rang twice from downhill. Rowan's heart stopped. "The cottage," she said. Warren's voice came over the radio. "Channel jam at the footbridge, water climbing west wall." Rowan looked at the main house. The basement pump had gained less than an inch. The barrier needed more height. The rain had not weakened. Wes reached for her shoulder. "I'll go." "No, you stay here. It's my house, and this is your line." The words hurt because they were true. Alma stepped forward. "I'll take the truck down the upper track." "Road's too soft," Rowan said. "Then we walk." Marisol pulled on fresh gloves. "Tell us what to check." Rowan forced herself to think past the image of water reaching the sewing table. Debris catches on the upstream bridge rail. Don't stand below it. Rope around whoever clears it. Warren knows where the pump intake goes. "He trained all of us," Marisol said. Wes squeezed Rowan's shoulder once, then left with Alma and Marisol. Rowan watched their headlamps disappear down the footpath. Grant handed her another sandbag. "They'll protect it," he said. She almost told him he had no right to reassure her. Then she saw his hands shaking beneath the wet gloves. "Build higher," she said. They worked for another hour. The basement water peaked just below the electrical outlets. Celia and Nadine moved boxes and furniture upstairs while Grant monitored the pump. Theo reinforced the V-shaped barrier. Rowan walked its length again and again, filling leaks, adjusting seams, and refusing to imagine the cottage. Warren reported the river crest by radio. 2 more inches, then she's steady. "Cottage?" Rowan asked. No answer came through the static. "Warren, cottage status?" the radio hissed. Rowan reached for the bell rope that was not there. Then Wes's voice broke in. "Blockage clear, pump running." Water touched the porch, not the floor. Rowan bent forward with both hands on her knees. Grant stood beside her, but did not touch her. "Machine?" she asked into the radio. "Still upstairs," Wes replied. "Still ugly." She laughed once, breathless and wet. Near dawn, the rain finally thinned. The new parking lot was split open. Cabin 5 held 4 inches of water. Cabin 6 had taken water along one wall, and Cabin 4's roof leaked where wind tore loose a patch of shingles. The main house basement was wet, but the foundation walls stood, and the window panes had not broken. People stopped moving in frantic lines and began moving slowly, discovering bruises and hunger. Grant sat on the main house steps with mud dried to his neck. Celia lowered herself beside him. Neither spoke. Rowan walked downhill. The cottage appeared through wet trees, its porch surrounded by reeds and debris. The sandbag wall bowed outward but remained in place. Water had stopped half an inch below the front sill. Inside, the broad table stood dry beneath the work light. The meeting board was streaked where wet hands had checked off names. Warren slept in his chair with the yellow blanket around his shoulders and the radio still in his lap. Wes sat on the bottom stair. Rowan stopped in front of him. "You left me uphill," she said. "You stayed." That was annoying, extremely. She took his wet face in both hands and kissed him without checking whether anyone was watching. Behind them, Warren opened one eye. "If you two are finished," he said, "somebody made coffee that tastes like a roofing product." Rowan rested her forehead against Wes's. Outside, headlights came down the upper path one after another. The neighbors were returning to the cottage, not with sandbags this time, but with wet gloves, empty thermoses, and damage reports. The storm had stopped asking what the property was worth. Morning would begin counting what it had cost. The coffee tasted worse than Warren promised. Rowan swallowed anyway. People gathered around the broad table and reported what the storm had done. Alma had water in the bait shop storage room, but none in the freezers. Marisol had lost one row of herbs when a greenhouse panel lifted. Theo's chainsaw had never left his truck, which he considered a personal victory. Warren wrote every loss beside every name, then marked which houses needed pumps, tarps, or strong backs. When Grant and Celia entered, conversation paused for half a second. Grant noticed. He stood near the door and borrowed dry clothes, holding a cardboard tray of coffee from the gas station. Celia carried 2 bags of breakfast sandwiches. "We brought something less poisonous," she said. Warren raised his cup. "This has medicinal properties." "It removed paint from the spoon," Wes said. "That paint was weak." Grant put the coffee on the table. He looked at the exposed flood marks, the meeting board, and the damp adults who had spent the night protecting property he once dismissed as theirs rather than his. "Thank you," he said. Alma took a sandwich from Celia's bag. "Good. You can thank us while carrying wet furniture." Grant nodded. "Tell me where." Nadine did. For the next 3 days, Bellwether Landing became one long cleanup site. The neighbors removed everything from cabins 5 and 6, stripped wet flooring, and opened walls to dry. Rowan brought her moisture meter uphill and wrote readings on the exposed studs. Grant watched her mark the first number. 19, he said. "That's bad. It's wet. Below 15 before we cover it." Rowan looked at him. "What?" "Nothing. You're making a face. I naturally look like this." They left the walls open. The main house basement smelled of mud and old cardboard. Celia had moved nearly everything important above the waterline, but the bottom drawers of Evelyn's desk swelled shut. A stack of family photographs had been on a high shelf and remained dry. So had the blue sugar bowl, though Celia had carried it upstairs before the storm and placed it beside her bed. Rowan did not ask why. They tore out the basement carpet. Grant worked without stopping until Rowan found him trying to carry a saturated roll alone. "Put it down," she said. "I have it. You don't. It's just heavy. You're shaking." He looked at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Rowan called Wes. Together, the 3 of them dragged the carpet through the basement doors and left it on the lawn. Grant sat on the steps. "I thought the retreat would fix everything," he said. Rowan leaned against the railing. "What was everything? The property? The house? Us? You thought bathrobes would fix us? I thought success would make everybody stop arguing about who did more. Did it? No." He wiped mud from his forearm. "It gave us numbers to argue about." Wes carried the wet carpet farther from the house, deliberately making noise so they could pretend he was not listening. Grant looked downhill toward the cottage. "When you claimed that place, I thought you were being dramatic. I was being dramatic. I thought you'd quit when it got uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable when I claimed it." He nodded. "Marisol said they came because you came when it was their turn. She was trying to make you live correctly. They came before you'd done anything for most of them, that first night. They came for Grandma." "Maybe." Grant rubbed both hands over his face. "Nobody would have come for me. The old Rowan would have denied it to spare him, or confirmed it to wound him. Both answers would have kept her tied to his version of the world. Then start coming when it's someone else's turn," she said. Grant looked at her for a long moment. "That simple?" "No." A claims adjuster inspected the cabins the following week, but the numbers did not produce a rescue. Flood damage, lost bookings, refunds, and repairs consumed the money Grant had expected to use for the next phase. The outsourced cleaning service declined to return until the site was fully restored. The supplier wanted payment for the bathrobes whether the cabins reopened or not. Grant kept 3 cabins operating and closed the damaged ones. He lowered the nightly rates without announcing it as a strategy. Nadine agreed to clean again at the rate she had named, but only until he sold. "You're selling?" Rowan asked. They stood in the workshop beside Evelyn's old machine. Grant was packing fasteners from the bins labeled metal parts into smaller boxes. I can repair the cabins or keep making payments while they're empty. Not both. What about refinancing? No one likes my numbers as much as I did. She waited for him to blame the storm, the contractors, the neighbors, or her. He closed one box and wrote snaps on the top. I got ahead of what I knew, he said. I treated people like costs because costs stayed where I put them. People don't, no. He opened another bin. Inside were Evelyn's old coffee cans, nested on their sides. Each can still had her handwriting on masking tape. Zippers, webbing clips, turn buttons, miscellaneous useful. Grant lifted the last one. Do you want these? They're yours. I know. Rowan picked up the can marked miscellaneous useful and shook it. Metal rattled inside. I'll buy them. You don't have to. I know. He named a price low enough to be kind, but high enough not to be a gift. Rowan paid it. Grant sold the cabin property in early winter to a couple who already operated river rentals farther north. They kept Nadine, reopened 4 cabins after repairs, and delayed work on the other 2 until the ground dried. The Bellwether River retreat sign came down. Grant leaned it against the workshop wall and offered it to Rowan for firewood. Paint might be toxic, she said. Warren said the same thing. He says bottled water expires. The bottle does. Grant laughed, then looked embarrassed by how much he sounded like her. The day before the sale closed, he came to the cottage carrying no boxes, papers, or equipment. Rowan was sewing a replacement window into an enclosure. She finished the seam before shutting off the machine. I owe you an apology, he said. You've owed me several. I know. I made your work invisible because it didn't fit the way I counted things. Then I used what I owned to remind you what you didn't. The truck, the machine, the workshop, the room in the house. Rowan placed the scissors beside the needle. And I stood there while Celia packed your things, he said. I told myself it wasn't my decision. It was easier. Yes. He did not ask her to say he was forgiven. I'm taking a job in Louisville, he continued, managing commercial properties. That sounds dangerous for the properties. Probably. When do you leave? Monday. Rowan nodded. Grant looked toward the porch, where the sandbag wall had finally been removed. Pale marks remained on the posts where Wes had measured the water. I am sorry, Ro. I believe you're sorry. His shoulders loosened. That isn't the same as trusting you, she added. I know. Trust takes longer than embarrassment. Grant looked down, then nodded. I'll call. You called before. I'll show up. That's different. He hugged her carefully, as if she might change her mind during it. Rowan held him back, not because the past had been repaired, but because he had finally stopped asking her to call damage a repair. Celia kept the main house. She also kept showing up downhill every second Saturday in work gloves that no longer looked new. She cleared the upper drains, checked the gravel ridge, and took weather calls when Warren needed rest. The shared maintenance agreement was her idea. Not because I don't trust you, she told Rowan at the broad table. Because you don't trust yourself. Because I know myself. The agreement gave every property owner clear responsibility for the drainage channel, culvert, access road, storm equipment, and seasonal inspections. No one person held the whole system. The schedule stayed on the cottage wall where anyone could question it. Celia signed first. Afterward, she slid the blue sugar bowl across the table. That belongs in the main house, Rowan said. It belonged to Grandma. So does half the mud on this road. I'm not giving it to you. Celia lifted the lid. Inside were packets of machine needles, not sugar. I'm storing supplies, Rowan laughed. You labeled the outside? Of course. The cottage stayed busy through winter. Boat work slowed, but awnings, work clothes, tool bags, and restaurant covers filled the difference. Rowan left the long view after Denise made her promise to keep repairing the housekeeping carts. You can come back if this fails, Denise said. Thank you. It won't. But I dislike sentimental exits. Wes began eating dinner at the cottage often enough that Rowan stopped adding the groceries to the yellow list. He fixed things only when she asked, and she referred enough marina work his way that neither could determine who owed whom. The list remained in the attic beneath the plastic storage bin of estate papers. Rowan stopped crossing names out. By spring, washable white panels covered the cottage's lower walls. Raised outlets ran along the studs. The broad table held the storm board at one end and canvas patterns at the other. Rowan left the old flood lines exposed in the corner, including the blank space where the next mark would go. The first heavy rain of the new season arrived just after dark. Headlights appeared along River Road. Rowan stood on the porch, listening to truck doors close and boots cross the wet yard. For one startled moment, she was 20 again, with no power, no bed, and 4 trash bags on a ruined floor. Then, Marisol walked in, carrying coffee. Alma brought empty sandbags. Theo carried shovels. Warren took his place beside the weather radio and complained that somebody had moved his chair 3 inches. Wes set food on the broad table and kissed Rowan's wet temple. Celia came down the hill in muddy boots and pulled on gloves. "What's my assignment?" she asked. Rowan pointed to the board. "Same as everybody. Pick what you can do." Celia read the list and joined the sandbag line. No one waited for Rowan to ring the bell. No one needed Evelyn's voice to tell them where to stand. Rowan checked the river level, listened to Warren's forecast, and looked around the cottage at the neighbors passing sandbags from hand to hand. Then she opened the door wider and gave the weather update.